cloud. So welcome to week 13, which is the unofficial final week of presenting in here, because next week's consultations with people, and the week after that, we'll kind of share our dissertation projects. So I've invited more people in than the class. Anybody can come, and today's kind of an event. We'll start with a recap of where we've been in terms of tips, a little bit of recap, and then we'll move on to a lot of new stuff that you haven't heard before. And be a couple of different focuses. One will be related to setting up a writing space. One will be tips about how to be productive. And one part will be our own, Meina Zhu, and my own personal recommendations and ideas and what makes us productive. And so we got a lot on tap here. I want to say that if anyone's interested, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern time, I have a guest in my other class, 511, talking about jobs in the field and competencies and skills. Dr. Albert Ritzoff, and I've probably sent most of you the link to that, has done 5 studies, I think, along with a couple of his colleagues, one of which presented in here. Florence Martin presented to this class on systematic reviews of the research. She happens to be a colleague of his and may pop in tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And so anyone's welcome if you want to hear about jobs in the field. And so you have a couple of his stuff. Okay, so Albert is an up and coming leader in the field, Carrie. He's definitely an up and coming leader. So so it'll be good to hear from him. The field needs new blood like Meina and Albert and others. So, and Chris Devers, we have one of his students here. So what else do we have to address before we get rocking and rolling here? I'm going to match people up for next week. I've already matched up at 11 o'clock, Alan and Yua Chen, and I almost think that I want to match up Kim and someone else who's doing Carrie, because you're both working in the higher ed space. And so I'll talk to you guys about maybe one-to-one meeting with you next week at maybe 11:45. Okay, so welcome to week 13. Meina's here from Wayne State, and we did a presentation, a couple of them, but we did one for Native Americans, or what we call First Nation people in Canada. The Cree Nation folks near Edmonton asked us to do a presentation on writing, and so we did one back at the very end of July. We were supposed to do one at the beginning of August at the Wisconsin Distance Teaching and Learning Conference, but unfortunately that one was canceled. There was a lot of issues last summer with COVID and all, but we ended up doing one for someone and we didn't expect, and we had about 60 or 70 people who signed up for that one. Some watched remotely, some came, well, they all watched remotely. So that was kind of a try run for us. I've done several such sessions on writing for the past 4.5 years. The first one starting at the University of Houston. I was asked to do a presentation there in November 2016 to Dr. Meina Lee's students, and she's a colleague of mine. And since then, I've been doing all these things on writing. And a few weeks ago, I presented in here on dissertation tips for defending and for revising a dissertation. And so this talk will kind of be a best of a little bit, not quite. It's not quite made to be a best of, but we're going to have some activities. We'll do some breakouts, I think, in here and have you talk maybe in groups of 2 or 3 or 4 about your writing practices and your writing goals. So shortly within this talk, we're going to go into a breakout room and do a couple of different things. This may go for, in fact, up 2 hours, and we'll have a break in here for about 15 minutes in this. I normally do this talk about 1 hour. It takes about 1 hour to do, but I added a bunch of things to it. So I haven't really timed it or have a sense of how long that will go. Okay, so I don't see anyone waiting. I mean, trying to, in case someone came in late, let me share my screen here with you all. And I have to show all windows. Okay. This has no sound, no videos, none of that. So it's called the G3 of Writing and Publishing Tips, Gentle Guidelines, Great Stories, and Gigantic, hopefully, gigantic scholarly gains. Now, if for just a second, I'll break this out here. We've gotten lucky during the past year, Meina and I, in that we've had gigantic scholarly gains. I mean, in the past, these are our publications. I printed them out. I think like Meina's had like 18 journal articles in 18 months, and similar to mine. So we've been lucky. You have to have a little bit of luck in this, and you have to have a lot of planning, and you have to have in effect, a lot of experience knowing what journals to pick. So I'm going to talk a bit about journal selection. And Albert will talk about that tomorrow night. If you come tomorrow night, he'll talk about, and we'll both talk about journals and selecting journals to publish within. And we'll highlight different ones and talk about our experience with them. Because the more experience you get with different editors, the more you know about what they expect and about what the turnaround time might be and how to turn the paper around in terms of revising it and getting it back to them and I've mentioned this in previous weeks, in a polite way. I'll say there's a correlation between politeness in an email to an editor and the chance of getting it published. But that's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. Nothing is a guarantee for getting things published. All sorts of odd things happen that enable something to get published, and all sorts of odd things happen that end up getting your article rejected. Sometimes it's a coin flip, but I think there's a definite, at least I've experienced, a definite correlation between addressing comments in a polite way. Even if you disagree with them totally, you can say you disagree somewhat, but I'd rather have you list the things that you agree with first and how you've addressed them, and maybe towards the end of the revisions that you've done, list a couple of things that you disagree with or you can't change or you are not able to change. So anyways, I'm not digressing, but I moved off of what I was going to talk about here. So let me go back. So we've been lucky. So we're going to go through a little bit about selecting journal, about the process of getting published, about predatory journals, the resources that exist out there to help you. And then I'm going to end with 20 of my writing tips and 10 bonus tips. So actually I'll have 30. Before that, Meina will go through about 5 to 6 of her writing tips. And we'll also, what's not on here is we're going to go back and show, because some of you weren't here in weeks 1 and 2, show our writing spaces. Well, you saw mine, you haven't seen Meina's. So we're going to talk a bit about writing spaces. And we're also going to show you a little bit about the places that we've published. I've picked out 15 articles in the past year, and I'm going to highlight those 15 articles and give you a little bit of insight, a little bit of, I don't know what I would call it, but stories behind those 15 articles that got published. And we'll make a commitment to your future writing. Now, here we are as all budding writers, wannabe writers, and before you go to grad school, you're going to say, I'm going to research whatever I want. When I get to grad school, whatever your professor wants. When you become an assistant professor, whatever your tenure committee wants. When you're tenured professor, I'm going to research whatever my grant committee wants, and so forth and so on. So this is a cartoon that indicates we don't have a lot of control sometimes over what we do and what we approach, because oftentimes we do research based on what our deans want us to be focused on or what the grant is asking us for. And so people write grants to get money in terms of specific things that are listed in the grant. I've tried to avoid that for the most part, and I do my own thing for the most part, but I have a different approach to things. Fortunately, some of the research that we've done over the past 5 years on MOOCs and open education have been enabled through a lot of resources that are free to access and didn't cost a lot of money to do our research. In higher ed, across the country and maybe around the world, there is an increase in expectations for writing. And this is a study that was done of sociology a couple of years back, showing that the amount of publications required across institutions nearly doubled over a span of 2 to 3 decades of what early career people were asked to do. And it keeps rising. And we are getting less support for that right now. The secretarial or the office managers and so forth don't exist anymore because these productivity tools enable us to do much of that. So, you know, publish or perish is alive and well today across the world. But there are ways in which you can let it kind of sit on the side and you can kind of ignore it and do what you want to do. And the more you are able to get in the flow of things that you want to do, the more you can ignore these kind of statistics in effect. But I just want to point that out. So in 2017, assistant professors in 21 departments of sociology in a study published almost 5 peer-reviewed articles on average on their start date. That means before they got hired. About 25 years ago, the number was 2.5. So, you know, when I was hired, it was half of the 4.8 in effect. When I was at Wisconsin, they always said you need 3 articles published to get a chance to even get an interview. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Newly promoted associate professors in article-centric subfields in 2010 also published almost twice as many as their peer-reviewed articles as their counterparts 2 decades earlier. So even associate, not just assistant, not just incoming people, it's across the board. So it's perpetuated throughout an academic career in effect. So it's created for many people an added stressor in that they need to they look at quantity or the amount in which they need to get at in terms of their scholarship. And so, you know, it's unfortunate because they don't think thoughtfully about where they are in the field, how they can influence the field and where they're going within the field and what they might have to say in retrospect for the field. And I hope that some of these tips that I've given in previous weeks, as well as what we'll give in this week, will help. Now, these first couple of slides were things that I covered in most of these in the first 3-4 weeks of the semester. So it might be this first couple of slides might be a little rehash, but it's important maybe to get a little reminder of things in terms of that. Now, I've sent a link to things to this PDF and these slides. If you go to that link in Dropbox, what I did 2 nights ago, I've broken all the slides on writing that I've done into 4 parts. And so if you go to Dropbox and the Dropbox link for this class, or if you got the link to this talk, you'll see a Dropbox link. At the very bottom, you'll see writing part 1, writing part 2, writing part 3, writing part 4, or writing tips part 1, 2, 3, 4. Part 1 will be on the writing spaces, how different people's writing spaces and what makes them productive. Part 2 is all these kinds of things, writing tips that I had been summarizing here for weeks. That's part 2, and I've got a couple of them in here. Part 3 is the dissertation tips and defense tips and revision tips. And part 4 is this G3 talk. So there are 4, in effect, independent sessions on writing, this one being perhaps the most comprehensive, this one most important. But the second one with all these writing tips might be pretty important for you to download as well. So the first thing is, you know, if you're spending all your holiday time on break, you haven't allocated your time wisely. You haven't planned things out. And when you are productive, you haven't set aside time during the day and ignored email and social media and Facebook and other things. So now, that being said, I am as guilty as this one as anybody, and there are certain holidays that I don't even know is a holiday. I'm just working anyway. One I agree with was Rebecca Schultman saying, stop yourself from hitting delete on anything. And I've repeated this over and over this semester. if you're going to delete text from anything you write, put it in a file. It might be called, I called one file cut text when I was deleting half a book I've written, and I was saving it for something else. And many times when you cut parts of a text, that ends up being starter text for the next thing that you're working on. That may end up becoming a separate journal article, or in some cases, a separate book. So avoid at all costs, if you can, if you hit delete. And I would recommend you save that saved text or that cut text on a flash drive, as well as the cloud, as well as a hard disk, just multiple ways in which you can save it. One of the articles that was in Inside Higher Ed by Danielle Marias was on strategies to focus while writing your dissertation. So many of you will be in that phase, if you're not already in that phase, at some point. One of the things that I mentioned earlier in the semester, many people try this approach of free writing, and I like this approach, wherein you might turn off your monitor and type. You might not look at or read what you've written, just keep it like you're on with a pen and paper, just writing things down, ignoring the spelling, syntax, the grammar, and so forth. You'll be amazed at what you can produce in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or more. Again, another tip that was mentioned over and over this semester is, it's not, watching TV, I'm out to eat a few berries. Well, that's all well and good. You should keep some berries by your side. I haven't eaten breakfast, I help. Well, a little bit. But writing produces text, nothing else. Now, there's a lot of planning, a lot of pre-planning, and so forth, that you pacing back and forth that goes on. Yaniv's a case in point. He likes to think and think and think and think and think and reflect and reflect and reflect, and maybe dabble in the writing and just take that and throw that away and think some more and think some more, and then go down and finally produce the text. A very mindful kind of approach. But actually, it's the generative aspects of writing that take place both on paper or on screen, but also in your brain. Or, writing is a generative evaluative process. We're constantly generating new ideas. But you might have a different approach than what I have and what Yaniv has. Everyone has a different approach to get in that mode for generating text. For me, I have to-do lists in my pocket. I've got tons of them in my pocket, and I check them all the time. In fact, all of you, and I may have pointed this out, I've got all your names in my pocket if you're one of my advisees, and I check this list and see who I've been talking to. But the same is true of my writing. You might have checklists of what you plan to get done that day, and then you cross things off. Maybe you put the checklist on your refrigerator. Maybe you put that in a planner. Maybe you put it in your car on the driving wheel, and you can see it, what you've accomplished. And so have a checklist, visualize your goals, where you're headed, have a timeline of what you want to accomplish during the semester, during the year, during 2 years. Identify the most productive times of the day for writing. What is going to be a productive time for you? For me, it's later in the day, 10 o'clock to 3 a.m. For others, it's going to be 6 a.m. Everybody will be a little different. Write first, clean the house after. As I mentioned, 2 years ago, I cleaned my office during a summer. I was planning to write a book. I cleaned it from May, June, and July. I finally got clean in August. And I started writing the book. Start writing first, clean after. Now, if you want to take 5 minutes to do a general cleanup and throw some things away, that's okay. But I'm talking about major overhauls. Trying to focus on writing. You can wash dishes anytime. Don't tell your spouse or your partner or whatever if you're not, no. Some people find it valuable to turn off their smartphones. Some people find it valuable not to check email. Some people find it valuable to check email at certain times of the day and then shut it off. It may change with the flow of your writing. It may change with where you are in the writing process and what you think you need to get done. Some folks like to schedule meetings in mornings or afternoon and save the morning or afternoon. I like to save an entire day and schedule back-to-back meetings throughout a full day, or at least one day to have a bunch of things set up, or 2 days, and I save things. Or the same is true of teaching. I try and allocate my days for teaching so I free up that time. Same is true in the summer. If you have to teach in the summer, try intensives. Try to do things in short bursts so you free up gigantic spaces for writing. I found that teaching intensive courses in the summer, early in May and June, freed up July and August for writing early in my career. Not so much anymore. Park on a downhill slope is a saying in this article, meaning when you get ready to pick that article back up, you're going to be writing an easy piece of it. Stop writing at an easy point. So you want to come back. You maybe when you get tired, you need to get some sleep and so forth. Make sure you leave a note for yourself as to where you left off, and make it an easy to come back to moment. Focus on one thing at a time. That's definitely true, and have that checklist. As behaviorism's alive and well with writing. Oftentimes, you feed yourself a few niceties. You got some things like that. You get your kombucha, and you're all primed to go. And your knees needs one of these kombuchas, and so that will help you focus on one thing at a time. The checklist will help you. And then you mark off the checklist. You get a berry and you go to item number 2. You get that, and you get some more berries, so we're all behaviorally reinforcing over and over and over again. There was more advice for finishing and advice for writing a dissertation that we went through during the semester. One article was by Burton Lewis Jr. Another article that we went through, and it's all recapped in Writing Tips number 2 if you download that one. Another one was called Rewarding Your Writing, if you remember. Rewards, as I just mentioned, is a way to trick yourself into writing. Inside Higher Ed, they've compiled a whole series of writing tip articles, and those are all compiled at a website that Inside Higher Ed put together under the name of Grad Hacker. And you can download these slides, get this link, and I'm trying to see what some of the, there's articles on scheduling your summer writing, there's articles on distraction-free writing, there's articles on dissertating while working, which is some of you are dissertating while working. There's articles on pushing past writing blocks. There's articles on procrastination and why you're not writing. So anyways, Inside Higher Ed and the Chronicle of Higher Ed have done a really good job during the past decade, having a series of writing advice articles that can help a new as well as more experienced person out. And they're very readable. They're typically 2 to 4 pages long. They typically have 5 to 10 pieces of advice in there. I honestly think that that's one of the best investments of your time that you can spend if you don't have time to pay for professional development. These are typically free resources that you can download, and many are linked within the talk here. I don't think we need to get into proposal writing, so I'll skip that. So now we're at part 1. I just want to cover a little bit of that other tip stuff that exists or that we've already gone through, but I wanted to recap a little bit to refresh your minds. So now we get some insight and advice for getting published. We'll call this part 1, the process. As an early career person, which you all pretty much qualify for now as you get towards the end of your graduate student process, there are a number of challenges that people face early in their career that you'll have to address in terms of productivity and writing. And one of the top ones, of course, is going to be time allocation for everybody, for me included, and how you approach the time spigot, how much time you make available for your academic pursuits and your writing in particular, will depend upon, all your personal issues as well as your professional job commitments. And so what you might want to do is think about how you can best free up and reflect on the time spent without becoming too enamored with it, and without punishing yourself if you don't meet certain commitments that you have. Make everything a flexible commitment. Don't make anything set in stone. Make it adjustable, modifiable, flexible, and you'll feel much better about it. So these are 10 kind of challenges or difficulties that I'll be talking about in this talk. Journal awareness is a big one. I've got a list of 100 and some journals in the field, and every month I'm finding a new one. No one knows all the journals within one's field. And there's one I published 2 weeks ago in called Sustainability, just because my colleagues are putting an article that related to sustainability. I didn't know the journal existed, and it's open access, and it's got high marks. So you will become more knowledgeable over time. That does help you. If you go to my homepage, under resources, if you click the resources button, there's a link to all sorts of journals within the field of educational technology, ed psych, computers and ed, that general area, education in general, mostly ed tech related journals. There are a lot of resources that I try to provide, again, under my homepage, under resources. When you find certain resources, like for me, going to Collins Thesaurus is extremely important, extremely useful, finding synonyms and antonyms for words that I'm using. Now, Collins is a British thesaurus, unlike going to Webster's or dictionary.com or something else. But find those ancillary resources for that will help within your writing. Things again that will interrupt your writing include your teaching duties, include your service duties, include your other commitments that you've got within your life. And I'll be getting at all of these kinds of things. So number one, put your best work forward. Always try and put your best work forward, and you do that through best way. You can for some people it's starting simple with a class project that turns into a journal article that they've spent a lot of time on a particular project, and it's evolved. They've gotten really excited about it. They've collected some data related to it. It happens a lot to students where at the end of the semester they say, oh, I didn't do human subjects on this. I got such a great data set. I could try and publish this. Well, happened yesterday to someone who's in this session right now. She emailed me with wondering about whether it's publishable or not. But if you do a good job at a class project, you can think about turning that into something more grandiose than what you had originally expected it would be, or at least it could be a pilot for something else. Often a grant proposal, even when it's not funded, could turn into a publication because you have to do a significant literature review. And by doing that, you've sorted through the articles in your mind in a way that might be helpful to others. And so number three, conceptual pieces, reflection pieces can get published. It's not normal to see conceptual pieces or reflective pieces published, but there are journals that have them. Tech Trends often will have those conceptual pieces. Distance Education, which is a SSCI top-level journal, has 2,000, 3,000 word reflection pieces in it. There are other journals as well. When you check the journal website, you go to the About, and you see what they allow, what they focus on, and so forth. Book reviews, as I mentioned yesterday to folks, I forget where that was. Book reviews are perhaps the easiest to publish, but you have to look at the journal and see whether they accept book reviews. Even the hardest journals, like the Educational Researcher, is looking for people to do book reviews, and they have one of the widest distributions in the world. And so I highly recommend, as a new person, read a book, get a book. and just take read it and do a review and get yourself published. Now, the other thing I'll recommend is don't do too many book reviews. Do one, do two, do three in your career, but don't do one, every month, or, don't expect to do one. But it's good to, one way to at least feel good about yourself as a writer, as a productive person. Literature reviews, again, like conceptual pieces, like reflective pieces, are not easy to get published, but we see that with the special issue I did on systematic reviews of the research, those are increasingly getting published now, doing meta-analyses or systematic reviews, as Florence Martin talked about a few weeks ago in R795. And again, she may pop in tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And then you have to think about who you're working with, your collaborative team. If you have a really good team that's highly productive and positive, not just negative about what they're doing, you'll find that you have a chance of getting your work published. Now, when you're looking over the journals, one thing you always want to look at is who's the editor of that journal, who's on the editorial board. Do you know anybody? Have you met the editor of the journal? Do you have a question about whether your article fits that journal or not? Can you send an email to the person and get some feedback from him or her that will be helpful to you? What does it say in the scope or the mission in terms of the readership of that journal? Who is that journal intended for? What are you should also take a look at the current issue, the couple of the prior issues, and look at who's publishing in the journal, what topics they're publishing in. Is this similar to an article that you're working on, or is your article just doesn't fit within the scheme of things there? So is there a match in some ways between what you're working on and what that journal has? And then often, new people out there, Meina, Merve, they'll be looking at acceptance rates. They'll be looking at turnaround time because they want to get tenure. They don't want the article to be sitting forever in the editor's desk. When I started out, I don't know if I had the article sitting, I think I printed it out. It might be here somewhere, but I had an article that took 8 years to get published. Okay. It sat on the editor's desk 3 years. Then my colleague and I were writing it. We got it. We took 2 years to revise it. Then it went back to the editor for 3 years, and it, almost didn't count for my tenure. Maybe it came like the week before I was up for tenure. It got published. It was a Journal of Accounting Education, which is an SSCI top-level accounting education journal. But anyhow, it was our fault and their fault. But anyways, and I've talked about this before. Don't procrastinate and get things back to the editor. If you respond to editor comments, you'll have a better chance of getting published naturally. I gave up on a lot of things early in my career. I typically don't give up on things now. So often people will look for SSCI journals and SSCI, Social Science Citation Index only. In Korea, you can get a $5,000 bonus for each SSCI article. In China, you can get tenure with one. Now they have Chinese SSCI, CSSCI. In Taiwan, you can get distinguished professor. I got 12 SSCI last year. I got nothing. That's America. Because all my colleagues are wanted to publish, and that wasn't they were just working real hard on getting them. Some people have a focus on only high-level journals. One of my colleagues in educational psychology at IU, she went to school with me at Wisconsin and recently retired from IU. And she only would focus on SSCI journals, only would have top tier journals, because at Wisconsin, everything was at the AERA conference and publishing the best conference and the best journals. And it almost cost her tenure. It wasn't until she was up for tenure that she started thinking about second tier journals and third tier journals and getting those articles out that didn't fit the highest level, but were pretty good. And so she started focusing on them. Then there are practitioner journals, or more practical pieces that you might get out and talk to more people in the trenches, people who are in the real world, in effect. Often those practitioner-based journals will get you a reputation, a wider reputation than the higher level SSCI journals, because they have higher circulation, more readership, more visibility. Also, journals that are open access are more shared. So I try to, if possible, publish in open access journals. Now, often the open access journals will not be deemed as high a quality, but some open access journals are social science citation index. And so I've tried to focus on a couple of those. So you might try a variety of things with your publications. So the practitioner journals will, if you've got points, comments, insights that will help instructional designers out in the case of ed tech, you can publish in a more applied instructional technology journal. I think there's a Journal of Applied Instructional Design. Is that right, Merve? Meina? Is that Journal of Applied Instructional Design?
I think so. Yeah, it sounds true to me.
Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Bonk.
Hey, I actually thought of one. Okay, thanks, Raj. Thanks, Raj. Thanks, Merve. So in terms of top tier journals, Instructional Science, which I think is a European journal, really high level. Internet and Higher Education is high level. It also gets high impact ratings and has wide readership and gets cited a lot. I know Meina had one 2018. It's already been cited 100 times. Ed Tech Research and Development, like our special issue last year, is a top tier journal. It's not open access. We got permission from them to make a couple articles of the special issue open access. Naturally, those are the ones cited. The British Journal of Ed Tech is also one of the top journals in the field. It's hard to get in. It tends to be more quantitative in nature than qualitative in nature. It tends to have like 5 reviewers, and the second time you might have a different set of 5 reviewers. It's a hard journal. Gotten in a couple times, but you know, some people put their chips or their marbles in the higher level ones. And the second tier, or some people might call it third tier, might be the Journal of Educational Computing Research, of which I just got an article in press, came out online. I used to be on the board of that one for a long time. I know the editor very well, Dr. Bob Seidman from New Hampshire. I know the editor, the founder of the American Journal of Distance Ed, Michael Moore. It's now got new editorship from Penn State University. Then there's Tech Trends, which Professor Bowling used to be the editor of. And now a guy named Hodges, I think. Last night, I got my new copy of Tech Trends, and in there, Meina has a publication along with Kay Tamika and Ahmed, and a couple others of ours. What's that?
Hwasa and Fatih and Professor Bowling.
Right, Hessa, Fatih, and Professor Bowling. So 5 people on that article. So congratulations to them, an article published. What was that, Meina? What was the title or topic?
It's about the designers' experiences doing qualitative research.
And Ahmed got a publication Friday as well with his wife, Victoria. Victoria's in here in 795. Congrats to Victoria and Ahmed on first responders to the COVID, meaning instructional designers are the first responders to issues that come up. Is Victoria here? I don't think she's here. Okay. So then there are third level or third tier journals. Some might debate whether these are second tier, third tier, or whatever, but anyhow, there's a pecking order within things. And some might be more focused on teacher education. And some of these, what we call third tier journals, might just be new. So the Interactive Technology and Smart Education, I think I'm on the board for. I think it just was founded by East China Normal University. Maybe it was about 5 years ago or so, if I'm not mistaken. Meina, do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that's from Eastern Normal Universities.
In Shanghai. So I visited there about 5.5 years ago for an ACT conference event. At that time, they were creating this journal, and I think it's open access. And at the time, we listed it as a third tier. It might be a second tier, or might become a second tier kind of journal. So some people, I think if you were at the session that I had last Monday night, you would have heard Yul Ha talk about subscribing to news feeds for a journal and getting the information about their latest publications sent to you as an automatic feed by subscribing. That's one way to find out what's being published within a journal. That's one way to find out what kind of special issues are coming up, which can help you in the publication process. If you're aware of what the focus is of the next special issue, you can align your research with that special issue. There is absolutely no guarantee that you'll get published, but it does help, okay? You can write to people who've published within the journal and ask them their opinions about the journal. Feel free to write to the editor about the journal with an idea that you have and get their feedback on things. If you've learned about a special issue, you might in fact post to your own social media the link to that special issue. I know in China, everything goes via WeChat, and they don't use typical websites for a journal. They all operate through a WeChat, right, Meina? Isn't that?
Yeah, we do market some journal articles on WeChat most of the time.
And if you look at the journals that you tend to be saving articles on or printing out articles, flip through them and see what common themes there are. I tend to save the links for interesting articles that I come across, then I can review them later on. I might even post to my own Facebook an article that looks interesting to me, and then I might come back to it later on, and other people may have a conversation about it. So there are ways in which you can share, you can reflect, you can save it for a rainy day and come back later. There are issues, though, that relate to problems and challenges, and one is having predatory practices. Some journals will write to you and say, hey, we've got this special issue coming up, will you submit? Or as soon as you publish one article, you'll get a couple emails from an unknown editor saying, we saw this article, wouldn't you like to publish a similar piece in our journal? There are all sorts of predatory journals out there that are in a way sort of corrupt, to try to get you to publish within theirs, and some charge you a fee actually. And so be careful of them. Make sure they're in the Web of Science. Take a look at their impact factor and their ranking. You can go to the directory of open access journals to see whether it's a legitimate journal or not. And so there are listings of journals. And my former student, Dr. Fengru Xu at Kent State, created these couple of slides here related to finding whether something is a predatory journal or not. They prey on academics. These fake journals, these sham journals out there are increasingly problematic, and it's sometimes pretty difficult to figure out if something is a sham or not. But they prey on academics, by making money off of you without having really high scholarly standards. So be careful, in effect. If you have a question, write to your advisor and say, have you heard of this journal? Write to a friend and say, have you ever heard of this journal? It sounds kind of interesting. They want to publish my dissertation. Believe it or not, somebody in Germany, when you get done, sounds really reputable organization in Germany will write to you saying, we want to publish your dissertation, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. You can typically tell it's a predatory journal when they ask for a submission fee, when they say the review process is short and sweet, we're the fastest, we'll get it out right away. When it seems like a canned email that you've been sent that could have been sent to anybody, just a spam kind of email. When they have a small editorial board of just a couple of people, it's not really clear who's who's on that board and where they're from. If the journal is new and hasn't been out for a while, they're only in the first or second edition or volume, then that might be a problem. You know, stay with the tried and true. Stay with the Cadillacs and the Buicks and the Fords before you get the Teslas. No, go for Teslas, okay, but before you try some of these other up and coming vehicles in which you can publish. If they publish a lot of articles in one issue, that's a problem. That's a red flag, as we say. If there's inconsistencies in the scope and the content between your journal article and what they say the scope of the journal is, if you read the scope of the journal, it really doesn't fit what you're writing about, but they want you to write and publish in it anyways, that's kind of a problem. Why do I want me to publish in this weird journal, you know? So here's an email that I got. Your article, Understanding Self-Directed Learning, blah, 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 has been published in EdTech and Society. It's impressed me a lot. We're impressed. Well, I feel good. Well, maybe I'll publish in your journal. No, don't. This paper has attracted attention for researchers around the world. You know, submit your research papers to us. We like what you've done. We invite you to send right away. Give us your stuff. Okay. And you know, you get something like this and you feel really good. Oh, they like my stuff. Maybe I'll publish with them. Okay. It happens all the time. You know, not quite once a day do I get those, but at least once a week I get an email, something like this. You know, there's all sorts of variations on it. Peer reviewed, open access, 50 to 70 days for paper publication, 5 to 10 days for paper publication. So you have to think about what journal you're going to select. Okay, is it a trusted journal in effect? And there's a website out there that's called thinkchecksubmit.org to take a look at whether that journal is listed in Think, Check, Submit. They have tips to confirm a journal's credentials, decide if it will help you reach your audience that you want, and make an impact on your career. So I haven't used that particular website. Feng Ru says that it's a good one. I just left it in there. These are slides that she and I presented a couple of years ago at AECT. So criteria to check the journal. Do you know the journal? Do your colleagues know the journal? Does Meina and Merve, do they know the journal? Can you identify the editor of the journal? Can you contact them or the publisher? Do they have a clear mission statement, a vision statement, a scope? Do they have things pretty logically laid out? Do they clearly indicate the peer review process that's going to take place? Are the articles indexed the kinds of articles that you use, that you relate to, that link to your discipline or your field? Do they have a fee? And are they clear about what that fee is? I avoid fees. Again, look at the editorial board. Look at all these things that, are involved. And then you can decide whether it's the right way to go or not. So there's 2 resources to identify the journals and publishers. The Directory of Open Access Journals identifies legitimate open access journals. Then there's Beall's list of predatory journals. beallslist.weebly.com. It has a whole list of predatory. So if I was to take this section of the talk down to one statement, it'd be these 2 websites are all I think all you need. If it's on Beall's list, just move on. If it's on the Directory of Open Access Journals, it's legit, move in. That's simple. All the other things, little caveats, but I'd say this is pretty good stuff right there. Okay, so taking the plunge with an article, whether it's a reflective piece, whether you're taking that grant application and expanding it, taking that class project and doing research around it, doing a book review, just as I said, doing a newsletter. Those are simple things you can do. I've seen recently And those of you in my 511 class, we had Marcy Driscoll in from Florida State, the former dean, in. Yesterday in Tech Trends, there was an interview of her, a 2-pager, very simple article to do an interview of an expert in the field and publish that interview in Tech Trends. You get a publication from it. It really didn't take a whole lot to do, but at least, it's something, your name, it won't count for that much for tenure or whatever, but your name's on it. People will recognize you did it. This is almost better than doing a book review, because then you've met the scholar who's really, successful, and you've helped them out by getting, there might be near the end of the career, and you're interviewing them, and they get their name in lights, and you get yours. Writing a book chapter. This is something I did early on in my career, a fair bit. I probably did too many book chapters. So you have to be cautious, because many people have books. During COVID, there's all sorts of calls for COVID chapters, but IGI Publishing, Idea Group Publishing, has the EdTech field has so many edited books, too many. If you get an invite to write a book chapter and the person is writing a chapter for IGI Publishing, it's good. Do 1, do 2, but avoid more than that, because IGI sends their books to libraries and charges $150. You can never afford a copy of those books, number 1. Number 2, it's kind of a scam, because they make money off those big, they have thick books, and they're just sending them to the library. So it really doesn't get in the hands of the people you want to read them, in my humble opinion. So yeah, it's okay to do a chapter. It's okay to do an interview. It's okay to do a book chapter. In fact, you should do a book review. I'll do a practical article, whatever. Maybe even write for Inside Higher Ed, the Chronicle of Higher Ed. That's good. That's getting you started. Maybe create a blog, and then from that blog, you can start to publish. Maybe write a grant proposal, and from that grant proposal, it gets you thinking about other things. You could use the pieces of that grant proposal to springboard into a journal article or a book chapter or something else. Maybe you're going to take a lead in a special journal issue like we did here in ETR&D. I've done a couple special issues of journals. It's a way to get your name out. But I think the third idea there is editing a book. My electronic collaborators book came out in 1998, since 1998. And that got me more known than probably most things that I have done. It was all IU based, all former students and colleagues and faculty. Solo author a book, that's a little more difficult. Merve is doing that now. It was going to be she had a colleague she's doing a book on bullying related behaviors, cyberbullying related. Merve, you want to jump in here for a second and tell us who your publisher is and what the title is?
Sure. The Littlefield is the Roman and Littlefield is the publisher. The book is about intervention and prevention methods. Mostly the target audience are school administrators, parents, teachers, how to prevent and intervene cyberbullying in especially between teenagers, school childs. The name of the book is Fame and Shame. The title, I'm gonna revise it, but yeah.
They agreed to that title?
Sorry?
They agreed to the Fame and Shame as a title?
There is the rest of them also a little bit more academic, but they like it. They say it is attention grabbing. So
my publishers always change my titles from the attention grabbing ones to boring ones, but okay. Meina and I are working on a book now, related to a book I have called Learning Journeys, a little storybook kind of book. We're doing one of Fulbright Scholar stories. So you want to also tell us about the journal, the book chapter on survey tools?
Yeah, I think it is going to be out recently. The name of the publisher is Information Age Publishing.
That's what I said, IGI.
Mm-hmm.
Avoid too many, do a couple for them. So Merve did a chapter on, tell everybody.
It is about the analysis of user comments regarding 5 popular software tools, including SurveyMonkey, SurveyGizmo, and 3 more. And also I examine as an instructional designer their interface with a friend. He's Zulfikar. He helped me how to the usability, actually, the navigation, the buttons, how we can navigate, how we can publish or share the survey. Uh, I think they are always evolving, but we just came up with some suggestions how we can make online surveys more effective to prevent dropout rates.
So interesting article there. As someone who's designed a survey tool, I was very interested in reading the features of the 5 tools that she reviewed for that article. So some might be a book chapter, some might be a book. You start, plunge number 2 is getting your name out there in a different kind of way. Editing a book tends to be really good for careers, actually, because you connect with other people writing the chapters, and then people read your work. Generate starter text through a blog, through your Facebook, social media, WeChat, a conference proposal, writing an editorial in it for a journal or a newspaper, writing a book review, a software review. These are all ways to start getting ideas out on paper or virtually. Many conference proposals I've written, I know that Meina's written, have turned into papers, have been starter text. They force you to write a 500 word or 700 word conference proposal, or 2,000 word for AERA conference proposal. Well, 2,000 words, that you can take 2,000 and turn it into 4,000 or 5,000 rather easily, compared to turning 100 words into something. 2,000 words is a lot. So AERA proposals are a little easier to turn into a larger thing. And so that's why people take and do the AERA proposal in July, and then expand on that as they collect their data. But there are my blog has turned as a feeder for many articles that I've written, and you might have a blog that you take and do that. So some tips here and some insights. I think this part where Meina kind of takes over. Is that right, Meina?
Yeah, I think you can go ahead. I think my slide will.
So we're going to get some insights from a new faculty member perspective for a bit.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Bonk, for the invitation. Nice to see all of the familiar faces and new faces here. So I'm going to talk about my perspective from the early career faculty member. I will cover primarily 6 points: goals, strategic plans, reflection, collaboration, professional development, and research focus. Next, please, Dr. Bonk. So it's important to have goals before you work on your research. As a faculty member or as a PhD student, you may want to plan what you want to achieve in each year. For example, you may want to attend maybe 2 conferences, AECT, AEI, or other conferences, or you may want to have some paper published or in the process. At the beginning of the year or anytime, you may want to make this plan first. And once you have these primary goals, then you can make your strategic plan. Next, please, Dr. Bonk. I think about the strategic plan, maybe last week, Tiffany or other IU alumni have already talked about this. I will just briefly cover this here. So in general, you just make your plan in your weekly calendar so that you can follow through that through this process. And then the third part is reflection. So every time when you work on a project, try to pause a little bit and see what you have achieved or what you haven't. If you have achieved something, think about what you want to do for the next step. If not, then you have to think about what's the barriers that prevent you to achieve your goals and carry out the plans. The fourth one is the collaboration. Dr. Bonk, maybe you want to go to the next slide. So this is a slide that Dr. Bonk added. It's a crucial co-writing considerations from Jordan. And then next slide, please. You can click the link through the PDF or the PowerPoint. And then there are several points that you may want to pay attention to. The first is that you have to clarify the authorship ahead of the time, because this happens sometimes if you haven't classified the authorship during the working process, then it's very difficult to distinguish who will be in charge of the entire project. So it's better to make that clear at the beginning, and also have a very honest conversation about the strengths of each team. Sometimes some person may be good at data analysis, some person may be good at literature review, or some of the scholars may be good at writing discussion or etc. So you want to leverage each team member's strengths in the collaboration. And also, like, you can divide the labor throughout the process. It's also important to consider non-writing part tasks. For example, you want to have a collaboration space. For example, you can use Google Drive or Dropbox, etc. And then you can keep meeting notes. Every time when you meet with your group member, make sure you take meeting notes, because maybe 1 week later when you meet, you forget what you have discussed before. So it's better to track your progress. And the sixth part is trying to respond to feedback professional, like Dr. Bonk have mentioned. When you get maybe reviewers' feedback or feedback from your colleagues or other scholars, then try to be respectful and be professional. And also build in time for feedback and revision, as I mentioned. Sometimes you may want to get feedback from your friends or colleagues. Last is also very important, because when you write your research paper in a collaborative team, each one maybe write some part, but you want to make sure all the writing styles are aligned with each other, and make sure the paper is flow very fluently. Next,
Meina, we've got a couple of comments from Danzi here on the chat, and I forgot to apologize.
Sorry, I forgot.
Here.
I didn't
So the question, Danzi, one I'll answer and one you can answer, Meina. So any tips about stamina, how to keep up with writing fatigue when writing fatigue? You know, I've got a couch next to my home office, and I go down and lay down for 10 or 15. I have an alarm clock next to it. I set the alarm for 15 minutes and I get back up and go back to work. Usually 15 minutes is a good way to catch your breath and get a little reflection and get your brain straightened out. It might even be 5 minutes. I've got pillows. Last night, right next to me, I have a little desk next to 5 minutes, and my phone was going off, and I went, oh, okay. Fatigue, when fatigue sets in, your body needs to rest, you know, and you find ways to fit that into your system. I have a lot of fruits and vegetables and things that I have to keep my body energized at all time. My kombucha sitting as I got green tea, I got water, I got kombucha, I got berries, and that's the way to keep my, you know, get some fitness in. Today for me is day 386 in a row. I don't know how much longer I'll go, but you know, fatigue will set in. The little naps go a long ways. And get, you know, when you need a break, get some food, you know, get some more berries, and, you know, get your brain outside for a little bit. Your stamina, that's one way. And stamina can also be enhanced from who you work with. The better the people you work with, the more stamina you're going to have. So pick your team wisely. Also, stamina might be helped by your article selection. Your title of an article has a lot to do with your stamina. You're excited about the article, about your research, you'll find the stamina. So I think, you know, giving yourself 15 minutes to think of a creative title will go a long ways with the stamina that you have, and not break yourself out of the routine and the boringness. And even just so Zixi is in here, and Zixi are studying Nepali kids. We're interviewing them about their self-directed learning of MOOCs. It's a really cool, going to be a cool study. It'll give us, you know, when we get tired, that's a cool study to think about. And so you know, if you study boring stuff, you're not going to have as much stamina as when you've studied more interesting stuff. You know, I'll say that's definitely true. So Merve's got an exciting topic there in both her book and her book chapter, you know. So there's Tadji's other question. What about the impact of open learning, the Journal of Open Distance and E-Learning? Meina.
I think I have published one paper in this journal. The impact factor is 1 point something. Let me check. As I remember, it is open access, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so someone did, Merve, what did you find?
There are different metrics. I think 2.2 is the site score, but different statistics provide different results. SNIP, I think it is 5 years. SJR, it is also maybe last year. So basically 3 different metrics. I don't know, maybe you can help me which one is the exact impact factor. I think that's the core.
So Meina published it recently. That's why I had her, you know, what did you publish in that journal?
Me?
Yeah.
I think one of them was published last year. This year, I submitted another paper to this journal.
Another one, okay.
So yeah, this is based in UK, if I remember it correctly.
Yeah, it's related to the British Open University Journal. So it's you know, the top open university. I know the folks involved in that one, Open Learning. It's good. It's a good journal. And you've got what was the first article you got published in it? It was a review of MIT OpenCourseware.
Yeah. It's related to MIT Open Education.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead, Meina.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't know. So I think in our field, there's several top journals. They may have very high impact factor, like 5 point something, or computer science maybe 2.9. But in general, the journal articles in our field may be around 2 to 1. I'm not sure, Dr. Bonk, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
So Raj seems to have a question for us, Meina. I have a question. How do we know if an idea is publishable and worth spending all the time and effort, please? The problem is that I have a lot of time just to realize whether it's feasible, the feasibility or not. So one tip is to post something related to that topic to your Facebook. If it gets a lot of hits and likes, you know, or you can even say, this is a topic I'm interested in. I'm curious what all of you think about this topic. You can make it a blog post, a short blog piece, and see if anyone puts comments underneath the blog post. You could have it a LinkedIn, kind of a little review of that topic in a little LinkedIn news feed. You could create a 2-paragraph on this topic in LinkedIn, see how many hits it gets. So those are social media related. Second, you can talk to your colleagues, your friends out there about the topic. Third, you can talk to your advisor or advisors about what your interest is. Fourth, you can see whether there are actual conferences related to that topic, whether they list that topic in the set of topics that they're interested in covering. Fifth, you can look at special issues. Are there special issues related to that topic that have recently been announced or recently published related to that? That's 5 off the top of my head. Can you think of, Meina, what you do to see if your ideas, what do you do to see if your idea is feasible?
I think Dr. Bonk has covered a lot of the points. And also you can also try to search literatures. If some literature say that this is an opening field that they suggest people to explore in the future, like the future direction of future research, if somebody mentioned that. And also sometimes the project may last for a long time. So you can have a goal at the beginning. It doesn't mean that every time when you have a goal, then you should, or you must complete that, or you must complete that in 1 year. Because most of the projects, maybe you work on maybe 3 or 5 years and then you get that published. So you don't have to be rushed with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bonk. Thank you, Meina. The reason is, like, I'm interested in like professional ethics in higher education now. How the different organizations or higher educations or using code of ethics, and how they are adhering to it and how they are training their employees and like the students or on ethics related issues. But I'm not sure if this is a feasible topic and if it is worth spending all my effort and time in it. So maybe I'll try these tips and explore more on this. Thank you so much.
Ethics, go to R511, my other class, week 13. Is a whole series that we're on ethics now. But I'm sort of skipping that topic because I'm unethical. No, not because I'm unethical. But you know, it's a difficult one. There are a couple experts in the field. Anna Donaldson is one, and she's written a piece on it, and that's in week 13 of R511. Take a look at the first article in there. Take a look at Bob Reeser's book that we use in 511. He has a couple pieces related to ethics of the field in his edited book on instructional technology and design. It's a kind of a classic edited book for the field. So, you know, take a look at what those people have to say about ethics, but I don't think ethics is decreasing in importance. It's naturally increasing in importance. And so if you explore ethics as a field, as one of your primary interests, I would think you'd have a lot of opportunities for publication within it, because it's not something that's dominant. There's no one dominating that field, nor is it something that's unimportant, and it's not going away. Now, you might have to find a unique aspect of ethics to look at to find your niche within ethics, and just say, I'm interested in ethics. There might be a certain type of ethics or ethical practices among instructional designers, or ethical practices of distance learning administrators, or, you know, you might want to focus that in a bit. But in general, your topic is not something that, as I said, is not something unimportant, and it's going to only gain in importance. And it's not something that has too much research, too much publications. It's an open area, but you're gonna have to define it. So, okay, we should go on, move on to, we're gonna take a break in a little bit. Let's see if I can get back to the slide we were at. Hopefully this will call, there we go. So I was gonna comment on this one. I ran into a problem early on in my career where I had a colleague who wanted to be first author or second author of everything. We had 3 people on the team, and he felt like he deserved to be first or second author even if he didn't do anything. And when I refused to publish anything at all because of that, I got sued. He tried to sue me for not publishing our work. But needless to say, it was a bad situation. It happened at West Virginia University and ended up being one of the reasons I came to IU. And so this guy was kind of a jerk, let's put it that way. Be careful who you work with. He was someone I met my first week as a faculty member, and I got sucked into his project. I call it other people's projects, OPPs. Be careful about OPPs, working on what other people want to do. So then, as Meina said, be clear about, you know, I'm pretty flexible on where my name goes on things, especially at this point in my career. I don't care. But you should kind of have a sense of who's going to be first author, second author, and things. Have a sense of who's going to do different parts of the work, and, you know, and try and chip in and contribute where you can. And I think another thing I mean alluded to is the tools that you use. Some people like to use certain tools that might be Google kind of tool, like Google Documents. Other people like to use Word documents. Some people like to use Apple, you know, I am a little particular. I like Word. I like annotations in Word, and I like using Word. And I tell people that I don't like Google Documents, but I'll use them if people want to use them and go back and forth with it. But I just prefer editing in Word, and it tends to be much faster, much more clear. But again, it all depends on what you're trying to do. There are reasons to use Google Docs for short, before you publish, maybe a team meeting notes and other kinds of things. So, you know, and things can get confusing and convoluted. So the numbering of the document, the dating, Meina and I have created a system of dating by, you know, putting the title and then the date and then the time even. So this is Raj, April 14th, 2021 at 10 p.m. Raj at 11 p.m. So you know exactly what time. So that's really important, actually. Things go fast. If you're heavily publishing, it goes back and forth. And, if you don't do it right, you can be backtracking and redoing a lot of work. And to me, the collaboration between, versions of the document is probably the most important aspect of publishing, to be honest. All this other stuff's important, but the version control, if you're good as a team and you're efficient and you're pushing things back and forth in a fast way, boy, you can get a lot done, but you also can get a lot of confusing stuff. It just, all of a sudden Meina's taken up and she's made some changes and I took it and we didn't know each other as we were going to make. So make sure you know who's working on it and when. And then, as she said, having a common voice throughout the document. I'm often the one who's smoothing things out so that it has that, common tone or whatever. Other people have a different role. I've become fairly good at that. And so, I like writing the ending and I like writing the beginning. I like writing the limitations. That's just what I like to do. Other people are good at methods, so. Meina, you want to talk about this?
I think maybe people may think about why do we need to collaborate with others? Maybe I can work on the individual project alone. There's some reason that why we collaborate in our academic. So sometimes it help you improve the quality of the research. For example, as Dr. Bonk mentioned, maybe different people have different advantages, and then when scholars from different perspectives provide the insights, then you can improve the quality of the research very well. And the second is it help you to extend your research relationships and networks. Maybe some of when you graduate, you may be looking for jobs and then you want to build networks. Some people may want to okay, I will go to conferences and meet people, but there's some other ways that you can build more deep relationship with people is to collaborate with people and then have publication with them. Also, it help you to foster interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research. For example, what Khadisha is doing, she's doing K-12 computer science education. Maybe in the future she want to collaborate with people in computer science, but she already has a computer science degree anyway. So in our field, people are focusing, if you are focusing on maybe English language learning or focusing on computer science education, you want to collaborate with people from different disciplines. As I mentioned, the fourth point is to share expertise and knowledge transfer. And also it can enhance your scientific and publishing productivity. For example, in one research, you may, some people may work on the literature review part. Of course, everyone should be very familiar with every part of your research, but then maybe one person will lead one specific section in your writing or in your research. It can definitely save some of your time and help you with your publishing productivity. The last point is it can accelerate dissemination of findings for community benefits. For example, if you have 2 or 3 authors, when people read paper from one of the authors, they may want to look at these authors' other publications. And then this can increase your visibility of your research. These are the reasons why we collaborate with people. Next,
I was just going to say that it's, more creativity happens at the intersections between discipline.
Yes,
and people who cross boundaries make new insights. And so if you find a colleague who's in another discipline, or maybe in your old discipline, in my case, early in my career, I collaborated with someone from the accounting department, my old career, and he was interested in education and educational change and changing the pedagogy of accounting and how accounting curriculum should be taught. So we were, his name was Steve Smith. Steve and I formed a collaborative partnership in that regard. And I was interested in helping my old field out with my ed psych background. So that was it made a lot of sense at the time. We didn't expect articles to take 8 years to be published, but we did work. And so Meina, when she was hired at Wayne State, was in an interdisciplinary type of position that she was hired into. And so her mission is to work with others. Isn't that right, Meina?
Yeah, that's right.
I'll go to the next slide.
I think we have already talked about how to collaborate. I will emphasize more on how you can find new collaborators. So as we mentioned that first you have to identify what's your strengths and what kind of other expertise you need from your collaborators. So you have to make sure that, okay, you find someone, this one can contribute to your research. And then there are several different ways that you can find possible collaborators. For example, you may find people through your class, from your classmates. Like when you take the same course, when you have some research interest, you can collaborate with your peers, or you can collaborate with your advisor. This is a very natural process. For example, I collaborated a lot with Dr. Bonk, and also collaborated with Murray on research because we kind of had similar interest. And also, if you want to find someone who are not in your program, or you want to know new people, so you can try to introduce yourself to them. Usually, if you find someone who you haven't met, you may want to email them and write a very elegant or respectful email to introduce yourself to them, and then express your research interest, and maybe you can want to schedule like synchronous meeting with them to discuss further ideas if they're interested in like that. So the other things we have talked before, I will not discuss it. And then for the numbers 8 is that if you reach out to new people and then they didn't reply to you or they rejected you, I want to say that don't be discouraged. So if you don't ask, you will definitely get no. If you ask, you have two options, no and yes. So just to try it out.
I'd say that the ways in which I often will get a new colleague to work on a project with will be at breakfast, lunch, and dinner at AECT or AERA, or being on a panel with someone, being on a special issue with someone, and then that turns into a panel, somehow linking with someone else who has another interest, ends up, or I'll be a discussant on a panel that person's in, and they have an interest area similar to mine. Or going to a session. I told you this 8 weeks ago in here, get your picture with someone at the end of their keynote or the end of their invited talk, say, can I, Professor so-and-so, I can get your picture with, and then send them the picture after the conference and say, hi, I'm really interested in this article, I read it, and form a collaboration through that picture that you had together. These are some of my collaborative partners. On the right, Elaine Coe from the University of Waikato wrote the Tech Variety book with me, Adding Tech Variety. We've done a couple of different things. Meina Zhu in the middle, you might have heard of her. On the right, Ka Zhang did the book, my newest book on MOOCs and open education in the Global South. She co-edited with me, and she did a book on my model, R2D2 model, about 15 years ago now. So find people you can trust and are productive and are positive. I call it P-squared people. Look for the positive people like Meina and others that, that are, and they're also very productive and so forth. Dr. Tom Reeves at Georgia, Dr. Tom Reynolds at National University. We've done several books together. Dr. Meina, or Mimi Lee at Houston. We did a MOOCs book, and then Ka Zhang and Tom and I did this book here together, and we did another one. So, find those people that you can work with, and then, find us several projects that you can work together on. Meina, I think this is your slide.
Oh, so this thing about the professional development is that in our university, we provide, the university provide professional development opportunity to new faculty members. So there's a national, I think Tiffany also mentioned that there's a national faculty development center, then they support the faculty member to join that workshop. It's more about how to develop your research plan or strategic plan, etc. So try to find the professional development opportunities on campus. I remember at IU, as a doctoral student, there are a lot of workshops or some other opportunities that you can join.
For me, I've got Marshall Goldsmith's one of my favorite articles. He has a book called Mojo, how you can get it, how you can keep it, how you can get it back if you lose it. Marshall Goldsmith, Mojo. He has a book called Triggers I'm listening to now in my car. Triggers, creativity, behavior, creating behavior that lasts forever, becoming the person you want to be, and How Women Rise, breaking the 12 habits of holding you back from your next raise or promotion or job. All from Marshall Goldsmith. He's an org behavior guy who's also kind of a Buddhist thinker and meditation kind of guy. He's more of a corporate trained person. So my professional development is getting books from people like him, and I listen in my car. I listen to, maybe 10 books a year, maybe not quite, maybe 5 to 10 books a year. And I'm now listening to this book. I just listened to Da Vinci, and even listening to Vinci. So I'm listening for words. I'm trying to improve my vocabulary for when I'm a writer. So the books help me. I learn the topic, but I'm also learning new words that I try and use in my writing. Anyhow, research directions, Meina. We're going to take a break in just a minute here.
The last point I want to make is a research direction. For example, I think in the early stage in your doctoral program, then you can explore different ideas and then maybe join different research groups, try to get exposed in our field. Once you are in the senior year, later you have to have your own research line. So what you want to work on. Some people may get, if you have different directions that not align with each other very well, people may question you why you're jumping from here to there to that kind of thing. So it's better to build your own research identity. Also, as an early career faculty member, like my senior mentors, even they always like advise me to try to define your own research line clearly. So this is one last tip.
Yeah, so I recommend 3 research streams or lines for a new professor. So find 3 areas that you're focused on. So if it's ethics of instructional designers, that's one of 3 you're gonna have to focus on, Raj. You have to find 2 more things probably for tenure purposes. I think, at least what I've been told. If you have 5 or 6 streams, that's too many. If you have 3 to 4, maybe even 5, but 3 to 4, 3, 4, or 5, or 2. You could have 2 and it might be enough, but you should diversify a bit. Let me go back here. So I'm going to mention the hot streak. Meina and I have been on a hot streak. And before we go to break here, and here's what I mean about being you can buy books on publishing and getting on a hot streak, but we had a publication this past week on addressing cultural diversity in MOOCs, massive open online courses. And there are 6 authors of this paper. It was, Meina, do you want to mention this article? You want to say something about it?
This is a project that our team have studied, I think, a long time ago. So it's kind of a complicated process. So anyway, we get rejected by some journal, but luckily we got very constructive feedback and we revised, and then finally it was published in this journal.
So this one, Meina wasn't the first author, somebody else was, and we were taking our time. I put it in her hands and we got it published. The basic notion is it was taking a long time. We presented this at AERA in San Antonio 4 years ago, and the editor, one of the editors of ETR&D came to us and said it'd be a great article for ETR&D. So we sent it to ETR&D after revising it for a couple of years. It was taking us a while. Finally, Meina took over. And it sat in ETR&D's desk for almost a year without, they didn't even send it to reviewers. And when they did send, after about a year, they sent it to reviewers and it got rejected. So we wasted 3 years, 2 years on our fault of revising it, and 1 year sitting in theirs. inbox. So it ended up going to a Turkish journal. We didn't even find out it was getting published till Merve helped us and contacted the Turkish editor in Turkish and spoke to him in Turkish and found out it's in press. So this is an open access journal. It's a good journal, a Turkish Journal of Distance Education. So TOJ, whatever. Merve, you want, what's the name exactly?
I think Marie just left.
Okay. So anyways, this one, and also we collected this data maybe around 2015-ish. Some of the data, we interviewed all the people from my first MOOCs book. We surveyed MOOC instructors. We got, so this paper, Raj, or anyone, this paper you can download in tables 3 and 4 is very practical. Everyone's focused on diversity and equity and inclusion. Tables 3 and 4 are all about that, about multicultural issues in doing MOOCs, cultural sensitivity, how to dress, what your jokes should be like, politics, all sorts of, this is a very interesting article. Extreme, we had experts from around the world that we interviewed for this piece. So from the standpoint of practical impact, this could have huge impact. So it was important to get this out there, and because it's an open access journal, even more so. So IST students, former student, Dr. Minkyung Kim at West Florida, Dr. Shuya Ju, who was a guest in R511 2 weeks ago. She's in California at TechSoup. Anissa Sari, still a grad student from Indonesia, and Najia Sabar, still a grad student. So all of us have been working on this. We had another article on personalization of MOOCs. So sometimes it takes a while to publish. Sometimes it's quicker than expected. We collected extra data with Meina's dissertation of students. She focused on instructor notion of self-directed learning in MOOCs, but we also collected student data, and we were able to analyze it and do some high-level quantitative statistics with another former student of mine, Min-Young Do, in Korea. Because Min-Young could run these stats, the British Journal of Ed Tech was really interested in, oh, this is ETRD one. So ETRD too was interested in this. Did I get this right, Meina?
Yes.
Was this a study of the student side or the instructor side?
From students. So
Yeah.
we collect the data from the students.
So here's an example. In doing a dissertation, you might collect extra data and get it published in the top tier journal. You know, this is amazing. This is extra data. And not only that, it's just within a year of her dissertation defense. My first publication of my dissertation was like 6 years after I defended, you know. So this is really, you know, high praise for Meina getting this one out. So sometimes it's quicker than expected. Just hit it the right time. ETRD is not easy. They're frustrating as this was ETRD originally. This was ETRD. Good things happen. So sometimes a journal, good things happen. Sometimes a journal, bad things happen. Sometimes it's fast and slow. This journal, the Journal of Computing in Higher Ed, took an article that a former student, young Yujo Ann, who's now the department chair at North Texas, Meina and I, and Lin at North Texas. They published it online first last year, but it's taking them over a year to put it in print. It's taking a long, long time to get it in print. Good article on what instructors do to gamify their MOOCs. So, you know, sometimes this was, at first it was very happy, but now I'm a little frustrated. I want to get this out. Sometimes you just have to go for the high level journals like distance education. Meina studied my class, looked at discourse in Canvas, and I thought, man, she doesn't have a chance to get this published. It's a classroom discourse. Well, she had a unique way of analyzing the discourse from, I think, was it 3 or 4 different ways, Meina?
Yes, 3 different ways to analyze the discussion data.
You want to explain the study a little?
So I think this is also connected with what Dr. Bonk mentioned before. When you work on the class projects, at the beginning, you may want to file an IRB. So at the beginning of this course, the professor, like Dr. Herring, she said, if you are interested in publish that in the future, maybe in the future, and then you can apply for the IRB. So that's what I did. And then I think that through the learning process, I kind of used the data that I collected and then to practice in that course. Then through this process, I get feedback from Dr. Harry and Dr. Bonk, and then that's how it works, how I turn this class project into a research publication. And also, to be honest, because in the class project only has very minimum requirements. When you work on your research publication, you have to work more on the data analysis and the literature review, etc. So actually, I spent much more time after the class, the semester finished.
So she got interest in the topic and just kept pursuing it and pushing it and was able to turn something unique. CMC, Computer Mediated Discourse Analysis, CMDA was the focus there. Sometimes you try for the best exposure. So the earlier study from the cultural sensitivity, earlier we had a personalization study, actually the same study, a two-part study. We went with IRODL because it's SSCI and it's open access. Not many open access journals are SSCI, and plus we get our picture in it. So here's, people reading the article, they get to see who we are. So if they meet us at a conference, they actually know who we are. Not many journals will put pictures up. No longer does. IRODL, I think, no longer puts pictures up. I thought that was pretty cool. And but they have a word limit, which is 6,000 words or so. So that was a barrier. But this got all more quickly. And it's established, and they also publish an audio file for people who are visually impaired. So it comes from Athabasca University in Canada. So our team's got good high exposure on that. Sometimes, as I said, quantitative data. So the study, we did a study of MOOC instructors and of self-efficacy and work engagement. And we did a kind of a structural equation modeling, SEM, and British Journal loves this structural equation modeling stuff. And so, they prefer quantitative stuff, and this went through pretty fast. And with quantitative data, they're shorter articles than qualitative data, where you have to put all the interview stuff in. And so you can fit the word constraints that a lot of these journals have with quantitative stuff. This is not my expertise. Min-Young Du is an expert at the quantitative side of things. And so we teamed up. She's good with that. We had the database of MOOC instructors. We have a database of 3,000 MOOC instructors. We've run about 12 studies on career development, motivation, instructional design challenges, career issues, cultural sensitivity, personalization, all sorts of things, self-directed learning, as I mentioned. Sometimes they prefer qualitative data. So Merve, I guess she left, we studied Twitter job postings in ed tech, and she'll present that next Saturday in my 511 class, the results of that. We're now going to study LinkedIn job postings. And there's a journal called the Qualitative Report. They prefer qualitative, and it's open access journal. And this journal's on the rise. It's not SSCI, but it's Scopus, and it's on the rise up. Sometimes you need to be patient. And this Asari, as I mentioned, and I and Meina have been working together on studying MOOCs. We've got a database of MOOCs, and Anissa wanted to study Indonesian MOOCs because she's from there, and Malaysian MOOCs because they're the same language. Well, this journal was taking a long time for each iteration. Each revision was taking a while, but it's a high-level journal. We were just patient. We wrote to the editor every once in a while, and it finally got out. It's a high-quality journal. I think this one only comes out 3 times a year is the problem. It does come out 4 times a year. So there's a little bit of a delay in the Asia Pacific Education Review. High level, just had to be patient, just had to work with them a bit. Sometimes you have to go to Canada. You can't restrict yourself to North America. So CJLT, which will have a review of my MOOCs book in the next issue, Dr. Chris Devers, who one of the people attending here is, so this book's being reviewed in that journal. It's a good journal. It's not SSCI. And it's open access though. And it's got a good reputation. Again, so you can see we sprinkled things around to different journals. This one looked at MOOCs, instructor motivation and innovations in design. Sometimes there's a secret entrance to publishing. So every year AERA, there's a division of AERA of online learning. And so our online teaching and learning, they take the best papers at AERA and try and do a special journal issue of the Online Learning Journal. And in 2018 and 2019, Meina and I were lucky to get our papers from AERA accepted for that. It typically comes out in December. So AERA is in April. By December, they have the whole issue published. That's pretty quick for turnaround. They'll have an announcement. In fact, there's an announcement now for the next one. They announce it in April or May. They have the papers in by August. They get them reviewed by September, second reviews in November or October, and publications in December. It's pretty, you have to be really good at getting it out, but Online Learning Journal is open access. It's highly credible. It used to be called the Journal of Asynchronous Learning Environments. It's always been high quality. There's 2 conferences around this one. Online Learning Accelerate and Online Learning Innovate, one in Orlando every November. The other one is in various. So this is really, it's really important to be in this journal if you're in this field of online learning, because it's open access, it's pretty high prestige. And in this case, we got in through the secret door. It got peer reviewed. But we had more control over the process. You know, we had, if we did a good job, we had good odds. The odds are better. So go with the odds, right? Go with the odds. And this is the one you want to go with the odds. Sometimes you have to contact the editor. So the Asia Pacific Journal of Education, another SSCI Asian journal, they were slow. And you know, we had made every change they wanted. And they only wanted a couple of things in the second revision, only 2 or 3 things. Well, why did they take so long? And so we made changes. So I wrote to the editors. I said, you're in National Institute of Education. I'm going to be doing a presentation there next week, online, virtually. Would you like to come to my presentation? I send the link. By the way, I have an article in your journal, and it was only a couple of edits away, and we sent that in, you know, whatever. And within 2 weeks, the article came out. And, you know, he never responded to my email, but that got the article out. So I sent them a nice note about presenting to NIE. I tried to make it more of a you know, more like, hey, you know, I'm, you know, in the field, you know. So again, whether that approach is the right approach or not, or will work all the time, you know, but it worked this time, I think. And I not only wrote to the lead editor, I may have written the assistant editors too. One of the names I did recognize in that. And so I've been to the NIE physically a few times. So I talked about visiting their campus and, you know, how lovely it is and all this stuff, you know. So try and put some, you don't need a long letter. It's just something a little personal, you know. So one of our grads from number of our alums from ISD work at NIE or worked at NIE. I know a number of them. Sometimes you have to try an easier journal. So we went with Contemporary Ed Tech with an article Meina and Merve and I worked on, more Merve and Meina, looking at the public health students who take the what was that course number, Meina?
That's the 341. It was a required course for the public health students or community health students to take.
And you
so
did
this course focuses on using multimedia design.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to mention it a little more?
So actually, Marvin and I, we taught 341 for 1 semester or 1 year, and then I think I did that for 1 semester. And then during the class, when we taught that, we thought it may be like interesting to see how the novice instructional designers approach their design process. So that's how we started.
Yeah. So, you know, Dr. Regaluth told me about this journal, or he published in it, and it's open access again. It's really got a good editorial board, but I don't think it's one of the most difficult journals to get published in. I think this one, though, restricts you to publishing in it only once a year, because some, you know, I think. With this article, if you download it, it's got great visuals. I like the visuals Meina and Merve put in of the designs the students had. It kind of crosses over with informatics, with Eric Stolterman's classes on design thinking. And so it's really a thoughtful conceptual piece. And we were having a little problems with the word count. In other journals, it had too many words in this article. So I don't know what the word count it was on Contemporary Ed Tech, but sometimes you have to find a different journal that, will take that. Sometimes you're just selected. So we had my last conference I was at, or one of the last ones, not the last one, but a year and a half ago in Scotland, Meina and I had a proceedings paper. Well, this was for the 50th anniversary of the Open University of the UK. And so, and also the 30th or University of the Commonwealth of Learning. So the Commonwealth of Learning is in Vancouver, and they help the former British colonies out. And they have a journal called Journal of Learning for Development. Well, what they did is they took the best proceedings and they invited people who had the best proceedings to write a journal article. And so we were invited to take our proceedings paper and make it a journal article. So sometimes you just select it, in effect. Sometimes you just, and so take a look at col.org, commonwealthoflearning.org. They have great stuff on helping people all around the world, in the developing world, in the global south, train and ramp up teachers for professional development online, all sorts of things. Her newsletter is free and it's fabulous. It's just so informative what's happening in Jamaica and India and other parts of the world. So I highly recommend it. And again, the Journal of Learning for Development is an okay journal. It's open access journal. It's it's shared through Creative Commons. And I've gotten couple articles out. And this one was a smaller piece based on Meina's dissertation. That's Sanjaya Mishra, who invited us in from the Commonwealth. That's the little conference pick there. Sometimes you're invited. So my friend Sam Nadu is the editor of Distance Ed. He's in Fiji, also in Melbourne. And Sam Nadu, as you can see in the picture there, I'm going to have to hit the hide video panel. So Sam is next to me, and then the other person is Daniel Burgess, I think is his name, and then Curt Paris. The guy on the far left, Curt did a book review of my MOOCs and Open Ed book that just came out. The third guy over, Daniel from Spain, just did a special issue on sustainability that I have an article in. And then Sam Nadu is the editor of Distance Ed, and I think Meina's on the board now. I'm on the board now. And he invited me to write a reflection piece. So I wrote a reflection on 30 years of synchronous learning, and it got published. And so, okay, cool. So sometimes you just have to hang out with the publishers. My point is, get to know the publishers, have some fun, and you never know, you might be invited to do something kind of cool. And so we were all hanging out at the 50-year anniversary conference in Scotland together. Everyone was in Scotland. Then that's Sharonika. So Sharonika is from Sri Lanka. She has a chapter in my book as well. I can't spell her or say her last name, but I just call her Sharonika. She had a book come out this year on open education practices and asked me to do the foreword of the book. So getting to know people, you're asked to do different kinds of things. And then some of those folks there are from the heads of the Commonwealth of Learning. Some of those folks have book chapters with me. And it's just group photos go a long ways with getting to know people, and do take pictures when you're at a conference with folks. The guy in the middle is Sugata Mitra, who created the Hole in the Wall project in India. The Slumdog Millionaire movie was based on him and his ideas. The guy next to him, and he has the Granny Cloud. He has all sorts of interesting things. The guy next to him is Sir John Daniel, the former head of the Open U. And then Mark, blanking on his last name, Digital Immigrants, Digital Natives guy. So sometimes you're invited, and it was my point. And then sometimes you just try tech trends. So I don't often publish in tech trends, but a couple of years ago, I just decided to do tech trends. Got a couple articles in tech trends. So what will you do? So I think, yeah, we're at a point of stoppage here. So some final reflection points. I've mentioned this before. Grit and perseverance wins the day. Revise, revise, revise. Do things one at a time. Find a good team to work with, and people you're comfortable with working. People you have a conversation with. Don't use anybody, and don't feel like you're being used. have it be a good social relationship in and among friends to work with. Plan a lot ahead of time with those people. Plan where you're going to publish it. You may not, but at least you have those plans, and set goals for yourself, bold goals for yourself, not so bold for everybody else, and check the list of those goals and whether you've met those goals. And if you're rejected, don't cry too much, cry a little bit, and then move on, revise, make a list of what you revised, and that's the way to get things done. So I want to stop here and see if Meina has a comment, because we want to take a little bit of a break. Meina.
I think Zixi and Carrie have questions in the chat window.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to open those questions up. So.
But unfortunately, Zixi is not here right now.
So you want to read her question, Meina?
Her question is, how do you determine authorship if some teammates contribute to the research but not contribute to writing?
That's a good question. So in my research teams, if you contribute to the research but you don't write anything, you are on the paper typically. Anybody contributes in the background, if they've collected the data but didn't write the paper, is still on the paper. In my mind, they're part of that project. Some people do not. So you want to be clear about that, I think, ahead of time, because quite a few people will not unless you actually write the paper. I think that's unethical not to include somebody who has helped you collect if they played a role. Now, if they've collected the data and you've paid them to collect the data as, and that was part of their job, then sometimes they're not included on the paper. So sometimes there's a gray area or gray, whether or not, so if someone's scanning surveys in a machine optical scanner, like my son was doing for a long time as a college student, he was running all these big projects. Well, he's paid, that was his job. He wasn't on the research team. He was paid to scan the surveys, okay? You don't go, typically that person wouldn't go on the paper. So again, there's this gray area for when the person will be on the paper and when they're not on the papers. There's no law, no. So have those things sorted out ahead of time.
I want to add on something. I think based on the APA, ethic rules, and also I attended some workshop on it. It seems like they said it then determined by who collected data or who. It's important whether this person have any intellectual contribution. For example, if this person designed the study and this person collected the data, maybe you should include that person in that paper because they have intellectual contribution to this study. If you are just hiring somebody to transcribe the data or collect the data, but this person doesn't know anything about this research, then this person doesn't deserve to be on the study.
Well, I think I'm going to do for 1 minute, we'll try to do two things here, committing 1 or 2 things that you're going to do for your writing, and what are 1 or 2 writing dilemmas that you have. It says 99 seconds, but let's combine it into 2 or 3 minutes. I want to break us all into, then we'll take a break for 5 minutes. So I want to break us into just discussions for a couple of minutes. We'll take a break and we'll come back for a little recap at the very end here of my 20 best tips here. So let me see if I can do a breakout rooms, and let's do it automatically. And we're not going to create 1 breakout room. Let's create 4 breakout rooms. We'll see how this works. So I want you to share what's 1 writing commitment, where are you going to take the plunge, and what's 1 challenge that you're facing right now related to your writing. And then I'll stop after a couple of minutes. We'll see how many ideas we get out. Okay, and I'm going to open all rooms. And Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Bonk.
Meina, how are we doing on time? We've gone over 2 hours.
Yes.
I have my kombucha here.
Is everybody back? Almost everybody? We got 9 seconds, 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 6 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. I think that's everybody. So we've got more, and it depends if we want to do a 5-minute more, 10-minute more, if you want to record another session. So yeah, I'm curious. I was thinking about taking a 5-minute break. Just everyone needs to get up and stretch and get something, and then come back and do a final capstone. Do we have any, or everybody could leave and Meina and I could take part 2. I mean, I don't know what people's schedules are, how long you can stay for this. So, or I can do something in between, like we could do like a 20-minute. I think maybe the most logical would be to take a break and then do a 20-minute kind of whatever we get through in the next 20 minutes is what we got through in the next 20 minutes kind of thing. So, but comments, questions from anyone? Report backs? Anything they want to report back their group said? I joined 2 of the 3 groups. So Alan, for a while, had you in group 4 by yourself. I moved you to group 3. So
that was it. Okay.
Sorry about that. So how was that meeting? How was that? Works okay? So, okay. So is there a pause? There's a pause button. So I'm going to hit pause. Meina, remind me. There we go. We're resuming. Oh, Curt, you have a PhD. Can you read resume? Oh, my. Glad to have you back for us in part 2, which really feels more like part 4. Thank you. Any opening questions that you have in your mind? Rob's just emailed me. I'll tell Rob, we're still going. We're still going. Come on in. We'll see if he does. We'll give him 2 bonus points if he actually shows up. But anyways, Rob won an award last week, as you all know, and there's a little blurb on it in the School of Ed. I got Rob. Yeah, you can read the second half. Rob's in the little blurb off the School of Ed homepage. Or yeah, IU School of Ed. So, when we first did this talk, I did it actually before Meina. I did it with Ana Paula Carrera from Ohio State. She's an alum. And we did it in Amsterdam at the Ed Media Conference. And so the first run through of all of this, so I did at the University of Houston a talk on writing, but the first time I did this particular session was there. And I came up with some ideas, and this is what I'm getting to now. So Anna was all about that first stuff and taking the plunge and the predatory journals and all that. And then my part was just the part we're coming up on. Meina has another piece coming up. So let me go back to the slides. I want to make sure you don't have any pressing questions or issues for us. Anyone have something that they want to, they're not clear? How about this? In the chat window, why don't you post the one thing that you learned from that first part that was something new? Something that caught your attention that you got from it. Could be 2 things if you want. But if you haven't gotten anything, well, that was in our breakout group, Meina, the file organization part of it. Yeah. So they didn't hear that, how I organize my files. That'll be a secret between you and me, Meina. We have many secrets. Yeah, that's a good one, Carrie. Knowing where to go to check out the predatory journals. not to delete. So predatory journal seems to be a hit. Okay, all right, good. I'm not surprised. So hopefully, and again, if you didn't find, and the talk of the 4 parts of the second talk has loaded with tips, and again, in R795, I went through those the first 5 weeks in here. I didn't want to repeat all of them. Flexible writing schedule, yeah. Okay, let me go to the slides then. Let me go back to slides then. And we were there. And show video panel. So I'm glad that you could talk a little bit about the difficulties and challenges as well as your commitments. We heard advice from an early career person. Now I want to give you some of my advice as someone mid-career or later career in having turning into a writing, what we call a writing machine. Well, I'm not, maybe not a writing machine, but I'm writing all the time. You know, all the books that you saw earlier in the papers that I held up, you know, these are just in the last year and a half, these journal articles. So writing all the time. Marking days in my planner. I'm now using Outlook's virtual planner, but I still have a paper planner, and I can see, and I've got paper planner for 2 decades worth. I can show you my COVID card. I've got both shots, right? Pfizer this week, yeah. Second shot, doesn't hurt. But every day in your planner, you know, I've got things allocated, what I'm working on every single day. And I try and free up days in my planner to focus. You know, virtual calendars are fine, but for me, I like to carry it around. No pun intended. I like to carry it around with me, and I look at this all the time. You know, I open it up and, oh, there's a whole free week in January. Where did that go? Don't remember what happened to that week. So then, as Meina said, you have to think about your network. And, you know, I have different ways of tapping into my network, but I have an address book that's 765 pages. It's in a Word document. I don't use the Outlook address book anymore. I have every address in a Word document. I search names that way. I have everybody's names, everyone who's contacted me, asked a request. If they, with their email address, their phone number, I search that all the time. I have it sorted by Taiwan. I have another list by Taiwan people, mainland China people, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Canada, and so forth. So I have a contacts list by country. Yeah, a lot of different ones listed by country. And so I have people to contact, or if I'm going somewhere, I can reach out to them and maybe we'd work on a project together. So I'm constantly refining my address books, lists. If I travel to Singapore, I go through the list and tell them I'm coming, and things get arranged that way. You know, life's short. Why work with people who lie? You know, work with people who are genuine, sincere. You know, like Raj, he's a genuine guy. He's going to tell me the way it is. Life's too short to work with people who, you know, who are doing unscrupulous kinds of things. And we all have egos in higher education, but, you know, try and temper them to some degree. Draft a timeline with multiple timelines and flexible goals. I had this up earlier in the semester, I think, but this is a critical one. This is just one example of a timeline, but in effect, thinking about when and where the papers will be at different stages. You know, at the idea stage, at the first draft stage, at the share the manuscript stage. Now, that's not the way I do it, at idea, data collection, all that, drafting manuscript. But drafting first draft, I might have in my timeline, but I'm focused really on the final one, submitting for review. So I'd have the third one and the final one and the first one maybe, and you know, because the final one is going to have many iterations after that, resubmissions, revisions, and so forth. Just having a timeline of all the projects you're working on, you can see in your mind's eye what you're going to get done in the next year. And got someone coming in. Okay, looks like we lost Raj for a little bit. And Rob, you're getting 2 bonus. I told him if you showed up, you'd get 2 bonus points, and lo and behold, you're there. You know, I told him you're in the School of Ed homepage because, you know, you'll have to check out the article. There's a couple typos in the article, but maybe go Monday afternoon and look. And then there's a tool called Future Me where you can write a letter to yourself. And I mentioned this earlier in the semester. So you'll all go right now to www.futureme.org and lay out your goals in the future. And when they will send you an email about your future goals, and you can self-check whether you've met your future goals. So this is one email I sent to myself, and I got it back. Dear future me, here we go. Let me write about my future self. Are you teaching R546 and P540 right now? Did you work on Education 2020 book during the summer? No, I did not. If not, why not? What did you accomplish? Is your desk cleaner than last summer? All you did was clean your desk last summer, so anyhow. Think about the potential publishing of each project. When a student's dissertating or doing a defense, I will point out on a page or on a figure, this is publishable. When I read the dissertation, I'll just say, this is publishable. Meina will remember this, and with hers, I'll say, boy, this is really good list of instructional design principles. You could turn this into a publication. And so I'm constantly thinking about what piece of what I'm doing or what others are doing could be publishable. And we got the stack of things that we've published in the last year, kind of indicate. You missed I went through 15 articles, Rob, and the pros and the positives and negatives, those that got out quicker, those that didn't go out so quick in the last couple of years. Be a bumblebee and be a butterfly. When you're at a conference, I like to stand in the back of the room and not be obnoxious, not be rude, but sometimes I move into another room. I listen for a while. Sometimes I only want to hear the last speaker, or I want to hear the first speaker. So I'll listen to the first speaker, I'll move to another room. You can cross-pollinate ideas at the water cooler, or water fountain, the bubbler, as we call them in Milwaukee, with other people at the conference. In the hallways is where a lot of thought happens. Meeting some colleagues who have been in that same session, talking about the session, or in the socials that come afterwards, where you're a butterfly and a bumblebee buzzing around and hearing different topics. I liked my early days at AERA or at conferences like AERA. I treated it as a graduate course I never had. So I'd find everybody who's talking about XYZ topic, like cooperative reading. I was writing a qualifying exam on it. It was the whole conference was like a graduate course. Now I'd want to sample things in different topic areas, not stay in the same topic and cut across different topics and disciplines. So I had it organized every session of every day in terms of my top 3 things that I wanted to see. Save text, save starter text. As I said, the way to overcome writer's block is to have something there. Everybody who wants a rec letter, they have to send me at least a few sentences to start me, or a paragraph that I rewrite. You need that to overcome that blockage, to that mental drain that comes from seeing nothing in front of the screen, that pain, that anguish, that tension, the headaches from nothingness. Nothingness can help you at the end of the day sleep, but we're not at the end of the day ready to sleep. So you need somethingness in the middle of the day. And that somethingness is starter text, deleted text from a previous paper. Go to the reference section. The first thing you should do in every article you read is the first thing, maybe read the abstract, maybe. You should look at the references, and circle the references that you find of interest or important and so forth. Then you can go back and read it. Now, I sometimes read a paper in reverse with the future directions and limitations first. I found out an awful lot about the papers then. But you can find many articles that are relevant to your research by using that reverse method, because that's where the gaps are pointed out. That's where the future directions are pointed out that you can use in your papers. So-and-so, Rob Elliott in 2020 said there's a gap in this, or there's a limitation in this area. So I'm trying, that's where you're going to find substantive sentences that you can quote or use or rewrite oftentimes, and references that you might use. Avoid high quality journal fixations. As I mentioned, I had a colleague in school psych who was so fixated on the highest quality journals that she almost didn't get tenure, because she went to Wisconsin like I did. They taught us to only publish in the top journals, but truth be, some second tier journals do count for tenure and third tier. Not everything gets in ETR&D and British Journal of EdTech and so forth. You have to mix it up a bit. You have to be willing, after rejections 2, 3, 4 times, to go try the second tier journal or third tier journal and move on. If you don't, you'll run into some troubles anyhow. It's okay to be a second author. It's okay to be a third author. It's okay to be a sixth author. You know, if you want to make an impact in a variety of ways, in terms of publishing, you have to be willing to take a different, not always be lead role or the lead person in the writing. You provide a supplemental role for other people. You'll have a heck of a lot more publications if you are the third author or fourth author a few times on things than if you only want to publish in the highest level journals and be the first author all the time. So it's okay. You can learn a lot from others. Take their lead and think about it. If you need summer money, teach intensive courses. Teach in bulk. If you're teaching 2 sections of the same course, try to teach them. If it's Tuesday, Thursday, do one at 11 o'clock and the other one at 12:30, back to back. You're in the same room even. So you don't have to move rooms and you get your teaching load done and out of the way, and then you free up space to teach. I used to teach 8-day courses in the summer. I teach it in Bloomington for 8 days. I go to IUPUI and teach for 8 days. They called it Summer in the City at IUPUI. I teach at Center Grove School District in the summer. Get it out of the way. Spend time with your family, spend time on vacation, spend time writing. But if you want the money, do it as fast as you can. Don't teach the 15-week buggers. You'll be teaching every day. Teach intensive, become the course. Be the course. Edit your papers a lot. It's better to be Beethoven than it is to be Mozart. Ranid he's Mozart, okay? People like Meina and I, we're more like Beethoven. We're tinkering, all editing. We make our papers are good because we're editing a lot. Some people think a lot and can write it all down. They think and they ponder and they pace. That's okay. You can sometimes be a bit of both, like what we call combiners. In my dissertation, we found some people were both. We did keystroke analysis of papers. But I'd say the majority of academics are a bit more like Beethoven, who's going to tinker a bit and refine their senses and find new transitions and insert new connections between pieces to make it all sound like a symphony in the end. So Fernanda Zamudio Suarez from the Chronicle of Higher Ed, for a while, a few years ago, had some writing tips that she put up in a video post, like a 1 minute to 2 minute or 2 minute video tip post. And this is one of them. You can click on this link that I provided and watch her video explanation. And she says, these are the 6 things that she says. Number 6 was edit your work over and over again. I said, just like Beethoven. That's what gets things successfully published. It's the 7th edit of the paper. You're not reading it as finally you print it out and read it as a hard, you'll find all sorts of mistakes after you printed it that you didn't find when you just looked at it on a digital screen somewhere. Give yourself time, not deadlines. As I said, in my planner, I'm giving myself time to write the piece, not a deadline of when I'm getting it in. I'm providing myself with that option. Now, it might be a digital planner that you have. Find a voice, she said. Don't just focus on getting published. I take this a little differently. I say that every paper should have something creative about it, something unique about it, something you're proud of, something that you want to share with other folks. So it might be a model, it might be a framework, it might be a top 10 list, it might just be your title. That just could inspire just through your title. But she says, find a voice, make it seem like you. I think Yaniv sent to me a note saying, I write short sentences and don't convolute with all sorts of academic prose. That's my voice-ness. You know, as I said, many of you write too long of paragraphs. I sent your last papers back with all these humongous paragraphs. Get it, so people can read it and understand it. So a 2-sentence paragraph sometimes works, not often, but sometimes. So it's not just the publication. Yeah, okay, it's great to be published, but something it's got to be you in it. It's something about you. And people know my papers because my ending and my limitations, as I said, is something I try and focus on, try and provide a macro level perspective on where the field is going at the end. She says, set goals based on output, not input, 3 pages double spaced. That might be work for some of you, to write 3 pages a day, or write 2,000 words or 750 words. She says writing is an exercise, and so we should just write. Pick a puzzle. Your writing is an answer to that puzzle. What's the gap? What's the openness? Where's there minimal research or scant research? And find a way to fill the field. Now she's done several of these videos, also ones on improving your teaching philosophy. So you might want to watch her. She's pretty cool. She's got good ideas about how to become more productive as a writer and also how to become a better teacher. Another idea I have is to do a special issue of a journal, or to do an edited book, or to do a conference symposium. The conference symposia that we did at AECT in Kansas City led to us doing a special issue of a journal for AECT, for ETR&D, which led to another session at AECT. It's just so one special session, a panel, led to a book, which led to another panel, which might lead to another book, who knows? But you just got to get started in all of this. The edited book I did in 1998, Electronic Collaborators, had countless dividends that paid off later on. It was a struggle to get it out at first, but believe me, it had many, many, many more positives than challenges. So find that unique thing that you'd like to participate in and do, whether it is a pre-conference symposium, and I've run several for the eLearn conference, or during the conference, or a panel, or whatever. Visiting scholars. Now, IU is putting a limit on visiting scholars, but I've sponsored maybe 35 of them. Some of them, when they come here, we publish together, we write together. Some, when they go back home, they write with me. But if you do, don't do too many, but if you do one once in a while, it may turn into a publication in some way. Try to publish or submit your paper before the conference. If you wait to submit your article after the conference, it might be too late because you'll move on to something else. I always have a goal of submitting to a conference a proposal, but then to try and publish that proposal before the conference meets. So Meina and I have been successful several times in publishing before the conference itself is held. Right now is AERA week, in fact, and she's getting an early career award. Congratulations to Meina for that, along with a team collaboration award. Her team's winning an award. So 2 things tonight at 6:30, Meina? 6 o'clock?
6:15 maybe.
Right in between.
Yeah.
So it's the SIG on, what is it? Technology?
TICL, technology,
Instruction.
cognitive learning.
Technology, instruction, cognition, and learning. TICL. They call it TICKLE. So as I mentioned earlier, have something unique, have a unique figure, table, model, something that you're proud of, but something that other people will cite, something you'll be known for, right, in the end. So that's extremely important as well. And so I not every paper, but I tend to get more excited about those papers in which I'm contributing something that could find use and value as my R2D2 model, my tech variety model, and so forth. Modify your environment. find your personal sandbox and modify it to best fit your needs. And I'll talk about that more in a little bit, but not too much. Never give up. Create that summary table of changes, what you changed, what the comment was, and be polite, as I said earlier, and you'll get published. Persistence and grit wins the day. Try, try, try. 90%, maybe 95% of the papers I've been on since I got tenure have been published. Before I got tenure, it was a 50-50 proposition. Half of what I wrote never got published. At least half never got published. I always move on to something, the next conference, the next grant proposal, the next project my dean wanted me on, whatever. After tenure, I could say no to some things and just, but also grit, persistence, and so forth. Be polite. Thank everybody involved as much as possible, but not too polite. I'll say that Meina is extremely polite in responding to reviewers. Sometimes, though, I delete some of her thank yous because there might be just one too many. So you have to find that balance between, but she's one that is very good with responding. Other people I've worked with, yeah, I have to change a lot of what they say to different prose, because if you get the editor in the wrong mood, they might just say this paper they won't even review. The editor has the right to just send it back and not review the paper. Meina and I had a paper recently, the editor of the Australian Journal of EdTech. They didn't even review, well, the editors looked at it, they didn't send it out for review. But still, even though, you still be thankful. Thanks for letting me know, we'll try something else. You know, the more you take that attitude, that persona, the better off you'll be. Recap the reviewer points. What did you attempt to address? How did you address them? And then if, you know, maybe have someone read your recap table to see if you're, you know, on spot, to see if you're going to turn anyone off, to see if, now I'll often revise other people's review tables and add comments to them. So often having another person look at the response table of all the edits that you've made will help. So get somebody else to look at it. Will help you move from dreaded to amazing, as Kathy Davidson said. You know, she's got a number of things that she does. And by the way, Kathy Davidson was featured in the Chronicle of Higher Ed this past, well, a couple of weeks back, as someone who's an accomplished writer, I think City University of New York, formerly of Duke. She has a new book related to this, in fact. Or is working on it. So she keeps a clean copy of the manuscript and an edited copy that she's constantly comparing. She makes 4 categories, as I mentioned in week 3, maybe 4 categories of potential changes. And she makes the changes of the easy things first, and before she moves on to the harder things. And I do the same thing when I make an edit to the paper. So she begins by deconstructing the whole report that she got and creates a template for change. The way her process doesn't work for me, but it may work for you. So the number 1, she puts the praising kinds of things, and she thanks people for the praise. And we do that too. When Meina and I and Merve and I write, we thank them for the positives. And then we start with the small, easy fixes, the run-on sentences, the grammar and all that. Then the larger conceptual, structural kinds of things we do maybe last, and the really weird stuff we may find a way to ignore that kind of thing. But 1, 2, and 3 are the main things we would focus on. There were other articles that we covered early in the semester on how to tackle revisions that were by Alexandra Gold. Again, marking things up on it, 1, 2, 3, things that take less than 30 minutes, things that take a couple hours, things that might take a couple days. And you start with the things that just take 30 minutes or just take an hour or 2, and you fix those, and you take some breaks when needed, and you mark them up. That's Rebecca Schulman again, who I mentioned earlier. Number 19, you want to celebrate your publications in LinkedIn or in send an email to someone who helped with the paper or is interested in the paper. Twitter. I'll post to Twitter and to Facebook, and the papers automatically go to ResearchGate. I have to put them in academia.edu if I want them in there, I think. So share. You'll see these people sharing. Celebration. So Number one, share. Number two, celebrate. And as I may have early, that's my nephew in the middle there getting married, and my brother is way over to the left. They were pointing to a book that was in the reception that I had written. My World is Open book was in the bookshelf there at the wedding reception. They found it. So they were celebrating my World is Open post. It was just the binder from that was a wall of book binders. And for some odd reason, my book got put on the fake wall that they created of books. So it was Korea. I thought that was in Kansas City somewhere. But don't celebrate too much. Be careful, as I mentioned earlier, about other people's projects. If you start with other people's projects, you might end up getting used by them and might have a role that you don't like. You might be third author on everything, even though you did all the work. So be careful on that and allocate your time wisely, and just say that you don't have time now, maybe you'll consider it next year is one way to go about that. Or what I do now is I recommend other people if I don't have time. So I create a list with hundreds of people with expertise, their bio, their picture. And then if they're asking for me to help on something that it's not really my area, I look in my list, I said, you might go for this person to help, or this person might write a chapter for you, or this person might help you on a grant, or I give them not just one, I give them 7 or 8 people that they might consider. So I'm not just picking on one person. That saved me a lot of stress, just recommending other people. And that takes time to build up that list of people that have the expertise. And it helps me to focus on my stuff. Look for special issues. Like Meina and I published an online learning journal the last 2 years. They had best of AERA papers. The online learning, teaching and learning SIG asked for you to submit the best AERA papers, and they accepted it wasn't the best paper, but it was one of the ones they accepted for the special issue. So find a special issue you can contribute to. Another thing, when you save research articles for a rainy day. I have a folder on my desktop called Articles to Read that's indexed by topic. Articles to read on the fourth industrial age, on the future of education, on STEM education, and then by year within each of those, blended learning, online learning, whatever. I might need those articles at some point, not when it's raining, but when I'm creating a new syllabus, when I'm writing a new article. They're all on my desktop, filed according to topic or theme, and readily available for me. And there are things that I've read or that I've skimmed and that I think are important. And often someone will write to me and say, do you know anything about emergency remote teaching and how teachers are faring during the COVID panic? And I'll have a UNESCO article sitting in the articles to read. I'll have a World Bank article. I'll have 4 articles, and I'll just here, you might want to read these. And that way I've helped somebody out, and I haven't had to spend so much time, finding things for them. So, save articles that not only help you, but might help a colleague out, might change your class out. So constantly save in a file. And off the desktop, I call it Articles to Read. You might have a different filing, a totally different filing system. Treat graduate students as colleagues, because really, in many ways, as a faculty member, you're still a graduate student in many, many, many ways, just a more advanced graduate student, And so if you look at yourself as a more advanced graduate student, and you look at your students as colleagues / graduate students, you'll have a better rapport with everybody. And, you find yourself learning a lot from them and being mentored by them and in different ways. And you'll expand your professional development opportunities through this, your publishing opportunities, your teaching opportunities, your life opportunities. This is critical, and just how you spend your life. I think the students, no one's a student that walks into my room in my classes. There are participants in a course. Every student is a potential teacher in my classes. Well, the same is true in your research. But at the same time, you need to find some people, not just one, some people who are more senior who you can go to with questions or advice, or just to moan about something that didn't happen, you know? And, you know, so I a week where something did happen, something didn't happen. You know, I had people I could go to, right? Meina, I could complain about something, or and others. So, you know, but find a mentor that, you know, you can, you know, I've got a couple, I've had some that have passed away, but, you know, that inspire, people inspire that have done cool things and great things that I can visit with and chat with. Form a writing group. I think Tiffany Roman on Monday talked about forming a writing group as being critical. I think Dabe Lee talked a bit about forming a writing group. Meina kind of alluded to last Monday a bit. This is kind of an extension of our session on Monday. I don't form writing groups. I form teams that do research and publish and write, but it's not a writing group. Some people like to form writing groups to have the goal setting, to have a tracking, people you can go to for feedback and that kind of thing, rapport, community building. It's extremely important for a new person to have that. But the problem of forming a writing group is you might end up on other people's projects. Again, so I caution against, you know, getting on too many other people's things and not being focused on what you're doing. So if you form a writing group, make sure the understanding is to help your goals out, not just to help their goals, but you should be helping everyone's goals. Write for a general public every once in a while. Find an avenue or outlet that might be for a generalized audience, like the Chronicle of Higher Ed. Ed Tech magazine used to exist, and I've written for it a couple of times. Some people write for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and, you know, Indianapolis Star. And, you know, fine, it could be for a newsletter, it could be other kinds of outlets like that. They come up every once in a while. It's hard to label them. It might be for the conference, might be for AECT or AERA might have a little thing. Keep a notebook on what you're thinking about. I just finished a book on Da Vinci, and Da Vinci had tons of notebooks, and the book about him was written because he left all these notebooks behind about his artwork and about the helicopter he was building and the airplanes and the water canals and you name it. He was a fascinating guy. Well, you should keep your notebooks. We are all in some ways like Leonardo da Vinci, sketching out ideas. We're all artists. Anybody, my son told me this, so it's not something I thought of. He said, you're an artist. Because anyone who writes, and especially write books, there's an art about it. And so we should be sketching our plans, our ideas out in these little notebooks at our side that we can come back to. As I said, I've got all my notes in my paper in my pocket, all the things I'm thinking about, but there's better ways than these little things. I could do better, but this is what I use. Engage in free writing, as Yaniv said, he lowers the amount of screen text that he can see to a couple of lines so he can focus on just getting ideas out rather than the grammar and the spelling. So one way to get into free writing mode is maybe not turning off your screen, but limiting the amount of lines on text that you can see at any one point in time. And then reading every day, you know, you never know what you're going to stumble upon, and you're all reading every day, but then saving what you've read in some ways. We're going to briefly talk about writing spaces. Meina, 1 minute, you want to explain your writing space? Maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah, so could you please move to the next slide? So this is a writing space that I shared with Dr. Bonk before the pandemic. Oh, this is in my home. At my home, I usually have a monitor and a laptop at home. Then I work on things. And then this is my office. And so I don't go to office right now since the pandemic. So collaborative tools, when I mentioned before, so if I collaborate with my collaborators, we usually use Google Drive or OneDrive, which is free from Winstead, and also Mendeley is a free tool that we organize our literatures. Next, please. I have already talked about that. So you can divide your plan into 1 year, 2 month plan, and weekly plan, and daily to-do list. These are my writing partner, like collaborators and mentors. So I really learned a lot from all these great professors and colleagues.
This is my desk with hydraulics, as that's shown earlier in the semester, but some of you didn't see this because you weren't at that session. It's about a $4,000 up and down. I'm working on one here upstairs that's manually lifted. It's very cheap. But anyways, I've got a couple of different desks and so forth. Look out into the woods. That's my old desk. Refreshments are at my side, but all sorts of article stacks that I've organized in some way, shape, or form, and inspirational calendar pictures. I have 3 calendars in front of me, one for now April, May, and June, so I can plan out what I'm working on, along with a picture of my daughter and my son, maybe. And so I can see the calendar, and so I can estimate what I'm going to work on. And so I have 2 calendars to my right and 1 calendar in front. The one to my front is for the current month. The ones to my left are for the next months. And so I can, think about what I'm working on now, what I'm working on in the future, and so you can see the how I have things arranged there, and the articles for later reference that I have sitting next to me and by my side. And the stacks by year, and the music that never plays. And outside on my couch, I have different books that I'm using as resources. When I take a break, I'll read a few chapters, or not chapters, pages from a book that's sitting next to me. And on my pool table, I sort articles out that I'm working on or that I'm going to take to a conference or other things. So I have a big sorting table. I use it for pool once in a while, but I also use it for that. I have a second, set of shelves for that. So I'm planning, as I said, save days in the planner. I don't, I say no to things that don't fit those plans, and I recommend other people. I read Dalai Lama quotes every day to get inspired, and I'm writing a set of quotes for myself every day in Facebook that I might create a Dalai Lama calendar based on my running every day. I look at my articles that are in review. I look at my articles in revision. I look for articles that were recently published all the time to get a sense of where things are at. But I try to be optimistic, positive when possible, and so forth. I have a number of tools that I use, including Zoom, but number one thing is a blue pen and not a black pen. Blue pens, you can see the changes. I refer to my syllabi all the time for my writing. I create syllabi for my writing, not just for my students. I create my syllabi for questions that I get from around the world. I go to the syllabi and that has the answer usually. So, that's a way to, why do I have a 100-page syllabus? Well, there's answers in the syllabus somewhere. I'll forward email to myself. If I'm, if I have an idea, I might, or if I'm worried I'm going to lose the article, my hard disk might crash, I save the article in email just as a last resort before going to bed. And I hate Bing. I wear out keyboard keys, so now I found a way to buy keys or stickers to put on top of the keys, so I don't have to buy a new keyboard. That's the woods I look out into and so forth. These are called my colleagues, Michael Thomas, a former student, and Brian J. Ford from the UK, the former head of Mensa in the UK. He's a Cambridge professor, and he's written 30-odd books on all sorts of topics: secret weapons of Nazi Germany, the intelligence of a single cell, whether dinosaurs are aquatic creatures. He's a microbiologist, so he's written a lot of things related to biology and living organisms. He's an inspiring person, but he's into e-learning. So we got met because he came to my talks on e-learning in the UK. So find what brings joy and happiness to you in your writing. So again, I listen to audiobooks. I get my professional development through those audiobooks. I save what I'm doing off my desktop on a work file by month and by year. Just give me a call. I love Collins Thesaurus. I like Webster's Dictionary. I like dictionary.com, but Collins is cool. I mean, I learn a lot of words with Collins. I go to different rooms to edit. I go outside sometimes to edit. I review articles in my pool table. I save, I get on slips of paper. I save starter text in files. I try and clear everything off my desk. I clear my email off and then I go to write. I don't have anything pressing in my brain, anyone pressing me for ideas. I have my fruits and vegetables and my berries always at my side, healthy food until the end of the day. And then I get my dilly bar. So I have my writing partners I mentioned. Themes, we interviewed about 40 people about their writing spaces. And these were the 8 or 9, 10 themes that came out. Most people had multiple screens. Most people went to multiple sites to write. They just rely on one site alone. They mixed their social spaces and their private spaces. They sometimes wrote in a social space like Panera or Starbucks, and sometimes in a private space. They were flexible in their goals. So, so we've gone through a lot today. We've done a lot. We've talked a lot about journals, about journal selection, about predatory journals, about planning your writing out and so forth. I've put all the slides up and you guys have stayed extra long today. Everyone gets 50,000 bonus points. Rob gets 50,002 because he came so promptly. So Rob, you did come, there was stuff there, Rob. You're wearing out keys, you figure, yeah, okay. Rob, was it worth jumping in?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, always good tips.
Comments from anybody? Everyone's brain dead, come on. Okay, how about, again, we're not gonna do a breakout room again, but at least in the chat window, from the second half, was there one thing that you resonated with or learned from in the chat? We'll post it up to the chat window and see, there might be questions for me. Raj is coming from his phone. Okay, cool, Raj. All right. Flexibility schedule, collaboration techniques, okay. Yeah, thinking about what the SIG is, SIGs that you could maybe join. I mean, that's just something as simple as joining a SIG might go a long way for one's writing plans. Publishing before you present, before you present, it just takes the pressure off, if you try and publish before the presentation. And then if you do happen to publish and you can say, hey, there's an article that just came out on this topic, so sometimes you have to worry a little bit about the proceedings paper, if there is one, and your publication. You don't want to have things overlap and be self-plagiarizing. So sometimes people don't publish in a proceedings because they want to publish off of that, or they publish just a short version in the proceedings and they rewrite everything. So that's something to keep in mind anyhow. If you go to the site conference or eLearn or EdMedia from AACE, they have a good proceedings, but the problem is then they own those, they have them in their library. And can you publish it in a journal then, Yeah, structured art. We are all structured art. Good one, Yaniv. Creating and collecting starter texts, spam journals, Khadijah. Polite, but not too polite. Yeah, you're a very polite guy, Tadzi. So lighten up. Don't be so polite. No. So I'm gonna end this in just a second. I want to give someone, since Dadzi's the furthest away. Dadzi, are you still with us? Is he gone? Are you still with us? You want to have the last word for today's session?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, you get the last word.
Definitely, I really enjoyed this session. It was very helpful for me, especially for a book I'm finishing now. I didn't talk to Curt about that book project, but yes, when I was coming to this presentation, I had that project in mind. And most of the tips I heard from this presentation, I will factor most of them into the finishing touch aspect of the book, the research book actually. And it was also great to see many people with different backgrounds as well. And when we were in the breakout room, I got to know them. They come from different places, and with different academic experiences, which I loved a lot. And lastly, I was happy to see Meina again. I saw her in 2019 in Toronto, and it's the second time I'm seeing her, even virtually, and I appreciate everything she has done so far, her productive, the academic production she has done so far. So I'm very impressed. So thank you, everyone.
So she's very
Thank
close to
you.
Canada. Go ahead, Meina. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very nice seeing you during the AI conference in Canada. And I'm glad you are here too.
She's very close to Canada, but can't go because of visa. So
Yeah.
Dazi's coming from Ottawa, working with Justin Trudeau. What's your book title?
It's about the trends, the challenges, and the drivers of online education in higher education around the world. It's based on a research I conducted 2 years ago at Boston College. I have been a visiting scholar at Boston College, and I did that research from January 2019 to almost February 2020, last year, actually. So even after my 6 months of visiting scholarship in Boston, I continued that research.
I thought you were studying AI, so silly me. That's just another thing. Okay, he's studying many things. Thank you, Dazi, for the final word. I will end this session and put this up to the cloud, so I'm stopping the recording.